I'm going to attach it, but I want to pin it to one of my monitors. or like the front of my my PC tower, because I think that would be hilarious, and it would be perfect. Like, all right, the machine has been blessed, it has been purified, it is happy now. That's what I think would be funny. Am I fabulous today? No, it's not Thursday. That was yesterday. I was very fabulous yesterday. Yeah, so it's actually kind of a fun little pin, because it's got like a metal purity seal, and then it has this like almost like it's obviously not leather, but it's a cloth with like a leather like weatherproofing thing on it. I have to figure out how it works. It didn't come with instructions, so I have my best guess as to how it works, but yeah, I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to attach it. Should I attach it to my PC tower, or should I attach it to my monitor? Because if it's on my monitor, I'll see it more often, and it, like, you know, goes with the aesthetic. But on the PC, that's like the heart of the machine. That's the heart of the machine. So, which one do you think would be better? On the PC? I have one on my PC too. It's okay, PC. Looks like we have some people leaning towards PC versus the regular, the monitor. Okay, we'll put it on the PC. I'll take a picture of it. I'll take a picture. Sorry, I was looking at the I was looking at the PC, and I was like seeing like, okay. Attach it to Steve from Subathon. Oh, but it's really big. It's not, it's like really big though. Yeah, it's pretty big. I don't think that would work. It would look as nice. I think I want to put it on the PC. Emo Aurelia? Yeah, this is Emo Aurelia. Goth Aurelia is the one with the red on the face. But this one is cool too. I like this one. Are we going to watch a fan with too much time? Yes, that's what we are going to watch today. It's been recommended to me a lot, and I was debating, like, should I wait for May and do, like, May the 4th and, like, Star Wars? And then I was like, no, I want to watch this. It sounds good. It sounds good. You should attach it to your headset to ward off heresy. I could do that, but then it'll, like, get on my neck and my face. But do I have a Blood Angels one? I have a Blood Angels pin, which is different from the Purity Seal. I do have a Blood Angels pin, but that one is like an actual like pin. So I'm gonna have to fix that. Yeah. May is a while away. I'll never escape May the 4th. Wait, what does that mean? Is that like your birthday or something? Is May the 4th your birthday? And so you never escape it? A fan with too much time also tends to join people who watches his things in chat, so he may join us. Oh. Well, I will, like, completely disclose. I like Star Wars, but I can't say, like, I'm like a die-hard Star Wars fan. I have not watched any of the recent, like, Star Wars shows. I've only watched, like, maybe season 2 of The Mandalorian. I haven't kept up with it. I really like the animated series, Clone Wars. That was great. Love that. Yeah, animated Clone Wars. Fantastic. That's, I think, what kind of got me back into it, but, oh. I need to edit this model. I keep saying that, and then I never do it. The red eyes are absolutely unnerving. I'm just gonna close my eyes, and I'm gonna talk to you, chat. The good news is I can squint, and my model has its eyes closed. It's pretty scary when you look at the red eyes. That was a bad idea. You guys said I should do it like this. That was a bad call. Also, I don't have timers on the models anymore, but I did lower the redeem by quite a bit. Because it used to be really, really expensive. So now it's like at a reasonable. This version needs some eye drops. Yeah, that one really does. I'm gonna fix it. I have to do it after stream, but I have a laundry list of things I need to get done. I wonder if the eyes of Salamanderelia would would look better if if it was black instead of red. Probably. I'll try that. If that looks good, then we'll do that. If not, I might just go white with the red eyes. I think that would be good. Don't worry about that. If you like Clone Wars, you will love this. Great. Oh my gosh, I loved that series. So it was a long time ago. And I got recommended it by a friend. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll watch it. And like, then we kind of like, we stopped being friends. And they were like, you should still watch that show. And I was like, yeah, okay, okay. I never watched it. And then another one of like my girlfriends said, hey, have you heard of this show? Have you watched it? I'm like, I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it. She was like, oh my gosh, you should watch it. Like, watch it right away. And I started watching it and I was like, oh, this is really good. This is really good. Really, honestly, good storytelling, good writing. And I really, honestly, it made Anakin's fall that much more tragic. It felt like between the movies 2 and 3, it was just like all of a sudden he's like, and now I'm going to watch the world burn. And this was like, you could watch his like slow descent into it. Heyo, what did I walk into? Hi, my name's Aurelia. We are going to be watching some YouTube videos, Star Wars versus Warhammer 40k. I'm really excited to check it out. How many points of 40k do I own? I could like list the minis I have. Most of them aren't painted because they were gifts, and I haven't had enough time to paint all of it. I can tell you how many books I've read. I have oh, there, Dorn. We haven't had this one in a while. Dorn. I have a Baneblade. I have the box kit of the Custodians. I have the Custodians on the bikes. I have the Terminator Custodians. They're not Terminators though. I have Sisters of Silence. I have, I'll have to look. How many points is Off-Brand Sanguinius? See, that's the thing. I don't know how many points he is. I've not looked into it, but I think it would be awesome. And then I have Trajan Valoris. I don't even know the whole list. I don't even know the whole list yet. The kaiju episodes were fun but a little weird. Okay. Warhammer wins Star Wars week. Okay, so I don't exactly know what topics we're going to be covering. I think it's like a variety of things, but I honestly think Star Wars might win most of them, unless like you talk about like logistics and maybe some parts of planning. I think the Empire might be a little bit better at that than Warhammer sometimes. But I have no idea. I don't know what all the topics are going to be. Off-Brand Sanguinius. Off-Brand Sanguinius, I purchased a model off of, well, basically someone else designed their own version of a Sanguinius model. So it's not like official GW 30k Sanguinius. I honestly kind of like this one more though, if I'm being perfectly honest. In tabletop games, are you allowed to mix units from different factions? As far as I'm aware of, not really. You might be able to if you're playing like a 2v2. But I haven't played enough. Because I would love to have my Baneblade as part of my Custodian army, but I don't think I can do that. But if I played with my friend who plays Guard, and I said, here, you can use my Baneblade, then it kind of works. It's keyword specific. Oh, okay. Mixing units is weird. Allied units are a thing. Oh, yeah, that's the term. So I guess if in narrative play, it's fair game. There you go. As long as they are allies. Could you even go like crazy and do something like you have the Necrons with the Blood Angels? In that one moment there where they were fighting Tyranids, could you do something like that? This is the Galactic Republic still, not the Empire. Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think the first picture, oh, it was Palpatine, but he was a senator at the time. No, he was Chancellor. Oh, okay, then that makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. And Mr. Shield, thank you for continuing your subscription. Thank you for being part of the Legion. You can have guardsmen and throw in a Astartes squad as an example. Okay, it's just not super common. Okay, I see. I see, I see. I understand now. It makes more sense. I'll have some of my caffeine. I'm really hoping we finish the Baneblade tomorrow. I was thinking about it, I was like, man, I've done like four Baneblade streams. And I would like to finish it. Oh no, I need the magnets, dang it. I've been so distracted. I need to buy magnets because my Baneblade is gonna be an Octoblade. And I need some of the green stuff. Okay, maybe we have this stream and then maybe 2 more streams. 2 more streams for the Baneblade, so 3 total. We'll see. To be fair, Star Wars is in the past while 40k is obviously in the future. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They always say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but everyone still thinks it's the future, even though they say it was a long time ago. Because, man, how did we get to this point? But also, a galaxy far, far away. I once played a massive game with like 10 people. It was basically good guys versus bad guys with Titans evolved. I think it was Orcs, Tyranids, and Necrons versus the Tau Imperium. Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun though, but also like how long did that take? That sounds like a very, very, very long day. Because one of the things that's keeping me from playing tabletop on stream is that it's not just like, oh, here, it's not like chess. You're not explaining your moves in chess. In 40k, like in the tabletop, you like talk to each other. You're like, okay, this is what I do, and this is what my unit like can do, and you're basically explaining your kit to the other person. So it's difficult because I don't know any other girls that play. I don't know any other girls that play, so I would love to play with someone, but this is the downside. Magic Ray, thank you so much for the gifted subs. Thank you very much. Make sure you say thank you and welcome to the Legion. Airborne Halo. Okay, that's kind of airborne. Airborne as in like the medicine? That's the first thing I thought of, not like airborne like you are in the air. I hate that medicine, by the way. I think so I have a very good immune system. I don't know why. I was rarely sick as a child. I didn't eat dirt, which is, you know, impressive considering I didn't ever get sick. But there were times that my mom, for some reason, was like, I was like 12. I was 12 and it was like a little unreasonable, I think. But she gave me and my siblings Airborne, and it was disgusting. It was so gross. Ugh. Frankly, I don't understand. Like, I get it why people take it, but I did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy it. You missed out, dirt was good. I mean, it's not like I've eaten the dirt before. I've face planted real good. I've face planted real good. VTuber Warhammer collab one day? Yeah, it would be fun. It would be fun. We're really flicking through the different outfits today. Yeah, we're trying a new style because before it felt like it was it didn't encourage people to. Oh, and that's where the downside hits. Okay. I'm gonna make sure that one gets fixed. Hang on, I'm making a note. I'm gonna make sure that Commissar one gets put back. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So the way it works is that it has to load the original model. I don't have the hat toggle for all of these models. Perhaps I should do that. So we can add the hat for whatever model I'm wearing. But then when does the hat toggle? Okay, well, we'll figure it out. I will adjust it. I apologize. We'll get it fixed. We'll get it fixed. You'll get your points back. What was I saying? Ooh, Warhammer Vtuber. That's cool. Hi. Hello. Skull of a skeleton. Yeah, we're just chatting for a little bit before we get started with Star Wars versus Warhammer 40k. I'm kind of I like to yap a little bit. It's part of my personality. If she's switching armor that fast, she must be Alpha Legion. Shh, 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 shh. Don't say anything. Don't say anything about that. Don't worry about it. Would a VTuber 40k collab just be like 5 hours of a game on hand cam? That sounds like so much fun. If I was able to meet with them in person, what is the more likely case is that it would be Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator is likely the way we would do it. Because you don't have to buy all of those minis, paint all of those minis. Even then, you could play with like the gray models, but you'd have to assemble all the minis. And I'm not going to assume that I have friends who are as into Warhammer as I am. So, and I've played on Tabletop Simulator, so I could walk someone through it. But I have to play a couple more times. Alpha Legion Aurelia seems like an elf. I don't know why I got this vibe. Excuse you? How dare you call me an elf? I'm an abhuman. Abhuman. Good evening. Hi. Hello. We'll get started soon, I think. It's the green armor. I mean, but it's like teal. I feel like the more elfy one is the First Legion, the Dark Angels one, because it's got that dark, deep green. This gives me Baja Blast. So my Baja Blaster. Wow, that was fast. That was a really quick redeem. Littlest says, "How dare they call her an elf?" Yes, your Littlest is amazing. Tell her I said mad respect. She might not know what that means. Tell her I appreciate it. Okay, now I see it. Now I want a Baja Blast. Yes, go get a Baja Blast. I love Taco Bell. I'm not sponsored by Taco Bell, but I would love to be. I love Taco Bell and I love Mountain Dew. They're the best. Speaking of Dark Angels, I think that was planned. I've effectively memorized the Dark Angels and Blood Angels redeems by now. Don't say sadly. Don't say sadly. It's good that they're getting redeemed. We love these. I love the Sanguinius redeem. Maybe I'll do a separate one that's just Blood Angels and is red. And then this one is Sanguinius. Maybe I'll do that. Give me something to do. Like color everything in. No tacos on Friday? Oh, okay, I won't. Don't worry. I believe in Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday is the way. But I have had tacos on Friday. But I don't call it Taco Friday. That is where the crime happens. You can eat tacos whenever, but the taco day is specifically on Tuesday, not on Friday. Are leftover tacos okay for a Friday? Yes. Leftover tacos are okay for a Friday. You just cannot advertise that it is Taco Friday. Then the Inquisition will find you. They already know where you live. They will find you and they will take care of you. And not in the way you want to get taken care of. This is not a, oh, I'll take care of you, baby. No. They're gonna take care of you. On the bright side, you won't have any more problems. Yes, yes, the button. The button is required. Is it Taco Tuesday then? Yes, it is Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. This is a heresy I can get behind. Is it heresy though? Is it heresy? What legion is the silver armor? So I can't really do a good gray, but this is word bearers. So the 17th legion. And like I'm not doing bald Aurelia for any of these. At least not half of the Primarchs are bald, but like a third of them are bald. And bald Aurelia is already scary. And if we had bald Aurelia out all the time, it would be the world would be a terrifying place. Terrifying place. Bald Aurelia does not look very good at all. It looks bad, very bad. Cat Relia is scarier? Oh my gosh, you have no idea. Oh my goodness. If you're bald in 40k, you're more than likely evil. Yes, I agree. There's at least like a 50-50 chance you're gonna turn out to be a bad guy. Bald Relia is based? No. No, definitely not. Bald Relia is not based, no. They're bald because it's more aerodynamic? Well, then why wouldn't Jagatai Khan decide to shave his head? I mean, riddle me that. Riddle me that. Why didn't he shave his head? If he wants to go fast, why doesn't he get rid of all of, like, the extra body hair? Like, especially the ones on his face. Because when you're in armor, I guess it doesn't much matter. Well, he only has the ponytail. Yeah, but still, that's drag. There's drag right there. The ponytail is like a fin. Oh, the Khan is speed and he doesn't abide by the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, okay, well, if you just say so. If you just say so. I miss Cat Relia? Oh, what? You miss Cat Relia. Are you okay? Alif, are you okay? Do you need help? Does someone need to help you? You should not like Cat Relia. It is scary. I did it on purpose. It was scary. Unless you're talking about the ear one. Then I understand. Then I understand. Well. We need more cats? I don't know about that. You guys, why? Why did you like the cat so much? Why did you like Cat Relia so much? For those of you who don't know, I had a very fun... I thoroughly enjoyed myself for my Halloween stream. I dressed up as a felinid from If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. I recommend you go to that live stream and watch it. Oh, I watched that a couple times. I thought it was... I still think I'm hilarious. Alright, I'm stretching. I'm stretching. I highly recommend it. It's so funny. If you want to be scarred, watch it. All right, should we get started? Should I put my headphones on and should we start watching things? Because I think it's time. I think we should watch the stuff. I think that would be good. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, my music is off. I'm turning up the audio. Yes, this one is the Death Guard model. Okay. We're getting ready. Get it all. Okay, so we have, I don't know how many we're gonna watch, because I found he has 73 of these. There are so many. I do not know how many we are going to watch today, because this is my first time seeing this content at all. So we're gonna figure out how much we will, how much we're gonna watch. But I heard it's good. I believe you. Well, new series, is it? When did the first one came out 4 years ago. When's the most recent one? The most recent one come out? Hang on, I'm not gonna watch it, I just wanna... Most recent one was 8 months ago, so if... then maybe we'll have a new set of episodes soon. If this is... This was from 8 months ago. Maybe we'll get some new ones soon. He's working on a super long one. Ooh, okay, okay. Count me interested. Okay. Let me make sure my audio's not gonna be a problem. Yes, this is Thousand Suns. It's just, it looks a little different. All right. Also, there is no need to start calling people into stream. Okay? Let things, do not bother content creators. Don't tell people to join the stream just because I'm watching their stuff. I don't want any pressure to be put on any content creators for not wanting to, like, to join or anything. So I know someone said, like, that he likes participating, but please don't go out of your way to, like, to tell them that I'm watching their thing. We would never. I don't know. I saw some messages to Chaotic Voices after I did my Imperium Girls cover, and oh no, I would just prefer they find out about it naturally, so then they don't think that I'm telling you guys to go out there and, like, hey, tell them I told you to do this. So that is a personal preference of mine. Imperium Girls cover? Yeah, it's on my YouTube. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But you can watch that later. Watch it later. I was on a stream yesterday. I raided into, I raided in, and I was chatting. And the streamer pulled up my YouTube channel and started watching my videos. And she was like, singing? You sing? And I was like, oh no. Because someone in chat said it, and I was like, oh my gosh. So, yeah, well, I hope we're gonna be friends. I sent her a Discord DM. Yeah, so yes, please do not go out of your way to barrage content creators if I happen to watch or cover or do anything with their stuff. I don't want them to feel like the desire that they have to go and watch it, A, and B, that I put you up to it. They will find it when they find it. The algorithms will deliver it to them if it is meant to be. So, it is time. We are going to start. I don't know what the audio is going to be like, so we're going to go. Oh yes, make sure to follow A Fan with Too Much Time. I have subscribed. Follow, like the video. Like. Perfect. Do it. Do it now. And we will begin. Thank you for waiting while I yap. Telling people on the internet not to do something, great idea. I don't say it because it's like, oh, well, I secretly want you to do it. No, I mean it. I mean it. Okay. Whoa! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That was loud. Oh my gosh, that scared me. I didn't think it was gonna be like, brrr. Ooh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Love the Emperor, for he is the salvation of mankind. Obey his words, for he will lead you into the light of the future.
Okay, how was that? How was that? Was that good? Was the volume good there? Was a little quiet? Oh, it scared me. It definitely jump scared me. I was like, ah. I think it was a little too loud in my headphones. Okay, I'm gonna turn it up and then we'll start over. I think it was just loud in my headphones. I didn't turn it down there, and then it like absolutely obliterated my ears.
Love the Emperor, for he is the salvation of mankind. Obey his words, for he will lead you into the light of the future. Honor his servants, for they speak his voice. Tremble before his majesty. Walk in his immortal shadow.
Let's see how this goes.
Let us begin.
Yeah, Blood Angels. I like seeing Blood Angel ships.
Stars dance in the eyes of the Emperor and roll in the palms of dark gods. Chapter Master Orion Phaetrus had heard such words before, and often they were followed by tales of ships arriving at their destinations before ever leaving for them. Stories about entire battle fleets traversing time in both directions at the apparent whims of the boiling warp. But he had never, in his 700 years of service to the Emperor, heard or read of anything quite like this. Confirm these reports. He ordered, his mind wary of demonic deceptions and alien illusions. The large man kneeling before his throne seemed to wince at that, raising his head to plead and speak.
We already have, my lord.
The astrogator said, exasperation thickened every syllable that slid from his wet lips.
8 times before it was reported to me, and then I personally verified it 10 times before bringing this report to the captain. My peers verified it 5 additional times when it was decided to bring this to you.
This is a lot of verification.
With respect, your beneficence, there isn't any more verification we can do with our current instruments and personnel.
What exactly are you suggesting? The ancient, half-machine warrior king asked, his voice as cold and calm as frigid steel.
His
head astrogator sputtered. He was a wide man, fat, and Orion had never had cause to speak with his current head astrogator personally. The man was known for being marginally more competent than he was shamefully corpulent, and given that he required servo limbs to aid in carrying his anemic bulk around the ship, he was a fairly good astrogator.
I think we need to get closer,
he finally managed, mopping at his sweat-laden brow with a red cloth.
We must land within the nearest detectable system and verify what we are seeing with our own hands,
He
if
does
not
sound
our
like the Baron
eyes.
from Dune, I agree.
The chapter master said nothing, leaving the man kneeling and sweating before his throne for almost a minute. Gradually, he nodded. "Return to your station," he ordered, and the mortal kneeling before him wasted no time in obeying, hoisting himself off the ground with his spider-like assembly and shuffling from the metal antechamber that served as Orion's command center and bridge.
Oh, so is this... Okay, so question. Is this art that he got done? Or is this art that was already done? Because I thought, okay, it could just be a piece, but like the spider-like assembly... This eye, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's too good. It needs eye drops. It needs eye drops. It's bothering me so much. I can't stop looking at it, and it's awful.
A scant second after the astrogator had removed himself from view, Company Captain Aurelian Tex approached the...
Another Aurelian spotted. Another Aurelian spotted. His name is Aurelian Tex.
We stand ready.
Sorry. Majoray, thank you so much for the gift sub. Welcome to the Legion. Chad to the bone. See, his name is Aurelian. Listen.
After the astrogator had removed himself from view, Company Captain Aurelian Tex approached the command throne, saluting smartly to his commander. He was the youngest captain by far,
I like him
barely
already.
cresting over 100 standard years of service.
I like him.
He was a prodigy within the chapter, a genius with a sword, and an equally proficient pilot and gunner.
Oh yeah, I like him.
As was typical within their order, the chapter master took some pains to keep the young captain close, both to mentor the man and to judge him. "What do you make of it?" the Marine asked. Orion did not speak, did not answer at all for a moment, as plans and probabilities boiled behind his yellow eyes. Eventually he broke from his
He has yellow
contemplation to
eyes,
ask
too.
his own question. "Is Keela still incapacitated?" The captain of the third company shrugged his shoulders with a soft, mechanical sigh. His face looked sour suddenly as he was made to contemplate the words of that mutant woman. "The navigator isn't in critical condition any longer," he said curtly. "But," the chapter master pressed, sensing more behind his subordinate's words. "But she hasn't stopped crying. She insists that the Emperor...
Related. I can relate.
The Emperor is... that he must be... Don't," the chapter master warned softly. The captain nodded and quickly changed the subject. "So,
She
what
won't
do you
stop
make
crying.
of it?" he asked again.
Every interaction with the... Even Space Marines don't know what to do with a crying woman. They're just like, I don't know, man. Women are anathema. What? I don't know, man. I don't know how to get her to stop. We can't, I don't know.
Orion rose from his command throne, carefully lifting the sacred blade, the mighty Serpentis Venandi, as he strode over to one of the large, glowing hololithic displays. This one displayed the galaxy, and indicated their current position several light years beyond its languidly turning borders. "I cannot be certain, but my eyes are honed and often find the truth, and the truth that I perceive, the yield of my vigilance, appears to reveal that either something has utterly remade the galaxy in a way that was previously unthinkable to us, Or when we tried to breach that thin tendril of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the warp flung us to the border of an entirely different galaxy. Perhaps even a different dimension entirely. The captain looked at the same hololith, coming to stand beside his master. His brows furrowed, and Orion knew without looking at him that he disagreed, even before the younger demigod spoke. "Is there perhaps not another answer?" the captain asked. "I can see that the Eye of Terror is not present, but does that really indicate that we are within a whole different galactic disk? Is it not possible that we were merely lost within the warp for a much longer period of time than we expected, and that the Imperium
I see
conquered
how
the
it
warp
is.
while we were gone?"
Interesting.
Orion shook his head.
Okay.
"It is not the lack of the miserable Eye of Terror that I find unbelievable. It is the missing Astronomicon that makes me think we cannot be looking upon our home."
Yeah.
The captain shrugged.
That's bad.
Perhaps
You're in
it is
another
just
galaxy.
blocked. Such things have happened on the far side of the Cicatrix Maledictum. Orion laughed at that, a bitter, unamused sound. "A fine theory, but blocked by what? The eye is gone, the tear with it." "Other things could," the captain started to say. "Crew," Orion interjected. "Play the audio of the Chief Navigator's words, the last words she spoke before we had to drag her out of her nest." At this, the crew hesitated.
Ooh, I want a nest.
"My lord, are
giant
you
beanbag.
sure?" asked one of the bridge officers. Orion nodded. "Everyone present has heard it before. Your faith should not be so weak that you cannot bear to hear it again." At his prompting, the officer complied, adjusting some of the controls upon the panel he sat before. In short order, the voice of Kila Shastrava began to bleat over the voxcasters on the bridge, her words retched between bouts of sobbing and shuddering sorrow. "By the weeping stars I can see, for the first time I can see, and my sight blinds me. Woe to us, woe to the world and the universe, for my eyes can see all, and yet the light of the Emperor has faded completely. Woe, woe to us, for our Lord in the stars shines no longer. Woe, we are made orphans, for our father has died."
I mean, technically, he's not doing too hot.
Impossible. Stars danced at his command, rolled in the palms of his hands, and yet those deceitful little specks had hidden something from him, something enormous, something which could shift the careful balance he had spent the last 4 years creating. And the worst part about it...
Okay, here's the question. Does the Imperium... So, I don't know if they count Psychers as being force sensitive, but is the Imperium on the light or the dark? Cause that makes a very interesting question. So, cause they're both. They're both. But does it depend on the individual Psyker? Yeah, at best, they are gray. Yeah.
was that he didn't even know, at least not yet, what precisely they had hidden from his sight. Palpatine had been informed of the unexpected gravitational disturbances by a mid-level hyperlane service report. Hundreds of thousands of ancient hyperlane buoys, most of which had been presumed to be underpowered and non-functional, had come alive nearly all at once.
Oh.
The report showed a
Zinch is
cascading
having
effect originating from a
shenanigans.
point in space a few hundred light years away from Pazab, a backwater world at the very edge of the outermost part of the Outer Rim. The fact that Pazab had no buoys around it only emphasized the unprecedented nature of the disturbance. But this was not something that would have drawn his attention normally. The Dark Lord of the Sith was only marginally interested in space anomalies and phenomenon, and not at all if they could not expand his knowledge of the Force or be turned to function within his design. A curiosity, and nothing more.
I'm so
That is what
excited.
anyone reading this report would have drawn from it. But Palpatine had known about the disturbance well before the report had been delivered to him, for he had felt it through a different vector, the Force. Something dark had just entered into the near boundaries of his soon-to-be-claimed galactic dominion.
He's worried. He's like, is someone going to take over? 'Cause this is not good.
Something which screamed and howled in voices the Darkseid had never used before. Palpatine knew it could only mean one thing. Rivals.
Yep.
Grim forces of a darker galaxy had arrived to stake a claim on what was his.
You have no idea. You have
and
no
the
idea.
sense of them made him feel a power which he had been loath to use before.
And the good guys of this realm are the ones that showed up. I'm assuming we're gonna have some Chaos Forces that also get sent over eventually. But, you're like, I sense a dark presence, and you're like, oh, that's on, like, the better end of the spectrum here.
The intoxicating strength of fear added itself to his arsenal, for what he sensed now was no mere chaff to be blown away, no Jedi-like force to abuse and deceive.
No.
Crawling ever closer, he sensed a threat he had thought silenced forever when his
I'm sorry, 1 second. He got a snatched waist. What's with that? It looks like a Chaos Space Marine, but like, why you got a little corset on? he's snatched, brothers. Look at that. He's like, give me that itty bitty waist. Where'd you get this? It looks cute. He's working it, yeah.
crackling power had executed the drunk and foolish Sith Lord who had called himself Palpatine's master. The threat of other masters of the dark side, and the plurality he felt approaching only heightened the sense of danger he now perceived. But, even though he had already felt it, the report was important, vital in fact, because while Darth Sidious was a master of the dark side and deeply attuned to such things, Sheev Palpatine, kindly Chancellor of the embattled Galactic Republic, was most decidedly not. Initially, he thought to wait until the Jedi brought the matter to him, thinking they too would sense the arrival of the oncoming threat. But as days dragged by, Sidious found himself vexed by his own competence. He had blinded the Jedi, and had done so with a great amount of intention. Even sitting within his room, speaking with him, surrounded by his dwarty statues, the Jedi could not catch even a whiff of his true nature. While he was a great deal more subtle than these newcomers, he was also a great deal closer to the Jedi, and these outsiders had not even entered the galaxy yet. By the time the Jedi realized the threat, it would destroy them, just as surely as Sidious himself would have, and that would not do. Thus, the report. "And you really think this deserves this kind of attention?" asked the Jedi Knight Renfai. Palpatine smiled calmly and nodded, completely negating his desire to scrunch his nose at the hissing, slurring accent of the Trandoshan Jedi before him. It was bad enough to be a pathetic, parasitic reptile warming itself on...
I was gonna say, I'm like, is he racist? And he is! He's 100%! He is! Oh my gosh! I mean, that doesn't, that is to be expected. I'm not surprised. I never read any of the Star Wars, the novels, so I have no idea. But it makes sense. It makes sense. But I wasn't expecting to hear that.
The power of the Republic, did it also need to be a Trandoshan as well? Most likely not, but I would like to be sure. These readings are quite unprecedented, and it stokes my anxiety to simply allow whatever is causing them to pass us by unobserved, he said, fingers folded in front of him on his wide desk. I suppose, the Jedi said. But why clones? Why not send a survey team instead? He added. The impertinent fool. Oh, I shall send scientists and researchers with you as well, the Chancellor assured. But it is unprecedented, so I would not send them out there without protection. Besides, we can never underestimate the enemy we are currently facing. Even if the Separatists have nothing to do with what caused these readings, they have buoys of their own. I cannot rule out the possibility that they will also attempt their own investigation. The Jedi considered for a second before nodding his assent. I see the wisdom in this, he said. Good, good, Palpatine added. Then I'd be glad to send you on your way as quickly as possible. Like I said, we don't want this phenomenon to pass us by. I already have a science team picked out and ready to go. How many battalions do you command currently? Currently, 2. Make it 4. I'll have you reinforced before you leave. The Jedi gave a shallow bow of respect, and Sheev smiled. Thank you, Chancellor.
This is going to be interesting. Let's get Anakin involved.
Do not mention it. Simply promise me that you will take care to remain safe. Odd things are said to linger near the edge of the galaxy. Our wars may be a month from its close. I'd not have you miss it because of a tragedy on the frontier. Keep your men close about you. The knight nodded. I will, Chancellor. Do you truly believe it might end so fast? Sheev leaned back and smiled.
Oh, that face.
Trust me, my Jedi friend. I am an expert in such
could
sorry things as war and peace. These matters can move suddenly, and mark my words, it will be over before you know it.
For you! This stuff. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I love that. It exists solely as a tribute to the writers and artists of all kinds who make these universes a joy. That's kind of cool. That's awesome. Does he have a Patreon or something? That would be cool. Wow. Okay, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. I must know what happens. I must know. I must know. We're going to the next one. Is there anything else in here? Make sure. Let me make sure. I don't want to miss anything. Yeah. Oh, are they bloopers at the end? Where would you scale Aurelia? Obi-Wan level? Maybe Mace Windu? Wait, are you saying... Okay, I'm hurt by your comments. What the heck? Hey. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, that scared me. Hang on, how loud was that? Out of curiosity, how loud was the WOG? Was it super loud? Because I'm gonna turn that down if it was super loud. I'm so sorry. That's loud. Not bad. I'm so sorry. Let me turn it off. Can I turn it off? Enable, turn off. Good. Okay. Oh my. It was so loud in my ears. I was like, ah. Here, I'm turning my other ones down. The raid music is gonna go down. Okay, we're gonna put to 50%. There we go. The raid music we will keep on, but everything else is turned off. I'm so sorry. Who did that? Redtail Wolf, thank you for the bits. You absolutely blew out my eardrums here. I'm so sorry. It should be off now. It should be fixed. Okay, let's do it. Oh man, I love this already. I'm so excited. And okay, so question, did he write all of this? Did he do this writing, or is he just narrating it? I would love to know, because I'm impressed with the writing either way.
We stand ready.
I thought I killed that. Why didn't that? There we go. Excuse me? Why is it? It won't. There we go. It wasn't like unenabling my thing. It was gonna keep screaming. There we go. Okay, fixed it. Weird. Weird. No, I didn't set it for exactly 100, but I did it for whatever, because if whoever wanted to scare me, doesn't matter. That was for yesterday, sorry. A topical wayment, thank you so much for the gifted membership. Okay, now all of the sound should be off, except the raid music. Okay. Okay, he writes and voice acts. Wonderful! That's amazing, I love it. I love it. I can't.
Now here's a foe worth fighting.
Oh, should I read this? A new threat, impossible only a few scant months before the culmination of his plans, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine of the soon-to-be reformed Galactic Republic finds himself potentially contending with a severely destabilizing force. Having received the information he required from the dispatched Republic Task Force, Palpatine's mind and concerns turn away from them, sending one last message to the doomed expedition before focusing elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jedi Knight Renfi, the task force, and his young Padawan ignorantly linger near the world of Pizab, nearly all unaware of the danger fast approaching. Nearly all. Da, da, da. You know what would be funny? If while the Imperium was just flying through the Star Wars galaxy, that if this text actually just existed in the universe and could like take out ships, it's actually like a hazard, just random bits of floating text that just takes you out. Just boom, takes you out. Yes, this video has now been instantly demonetized. That's okay. That's okay. It kind of frees you if you don't have anything monetized. Then you can put whatever you want in here, pretty much.
They had been stationed within System K749 for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks of watching Dr. Sheena and her team pace and argue and tap on their datapads, 2 weeks of watching his master, Jedi Knight Ren-Fi, do almost nothing but
Ren-Fi, got
meditate.
it.
2 weeks of doing everything in his power to escape that meditation. At first, Gaffin took shelter with the clones, but that proved only marginally less irritating than listening to his own breath, since all they did was drill and complain about drilling. They didn't watch holovids or play Pazak, at least not most of them. Their hobbies, passions, and fun-time distractions all had to do with fighting, or training to fight, or cleaning weapons, counting ammunition, or sometimes comparing war stories. Gaffin's master had once mused to him that the Republic had never created anything as efficient and effective as the clone army.
An entire army and armada of what amounts to be tamed Mandalorians. The Republic will never lose another conflict due to strength of arms.
Foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. You're about to lose all of your men.
Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't.
If you get into a
Gaffin
conflict.
was no expert in Mandalorians, though he figured his former acquaintance, Ahsoka Tano, would know a fair amount by now.
Yo!
He had known her as a learner, before she had been taken for training under a proper master, and he had heard of her exploits in regards to that nearly extinct warrior culture. More troublingly, he had also heard that she had chosen to leave the Jedi Order, though he knew only a few of those details.
Oh, so okay, so this is at the end. So this is what? The last season were 7 seasons, or was there 8 seasons? So it's like the second to last season, so she's left. That is good information to know.
His pondering was interrupted as a group of clones entered the hallway he was looking over, led by his master. The Padawan barely moved, only tucking his feet closer to his chin as he watched through the small grate above them, and listened. "We've checked the entire ship, General. I'm not sure the boy is still even present on the Honor Hound," said Captain Kraken.
Oh my gosh.
Even as he spoke, the clones behind him were clearly looking for Gaffin, peering into spaces where he might fit and opening the maintenance access
Your
panels
master's
as they
gonna
passed
find you
them.
so fast.
He almost laughed. They'd never find him like that, and they'd never even believe he could fit into the ventilation system, much less check it.
He is here, Captain. He's just slacking off,
said Ren-Fi with a shake of his head. "What are you going to do when you find him?" the captain asked. The Jedi General shrugged.
"I suppose I'll have to force him to make up for all the lost time he wasted. 3 days of isolative meditation will do us both some good."
Gaffin's blood ran cold in time with Captain Kraken's whistled reaction. "Not pulling any punches this time, eh, sir?"
3 days.
The clone captain said with a snicker.
Well, if we discover that he was not slacking off, perhaps helping Dr. Sheena, then maybe it would only be 3 hours of meditation instead of 3 days.
This is how you catch your kid. If you think your kid's listening to you, here's what you do. Because if they find him with Dr. Sheena, 100% he's gonna know he was nearby and he was listening in. Oh my gosh, wonderful.
Days.
The clone tilted his head in confusion, but Ren-Fi said nothing more. The statement clearly struck Captain Kraken as odd, and he remained in the room even as the Jedi moved on, looking around suspiciously. "Ah, blast it! Open up these vent covers. I know he probably can't fit in there, but that boy is damn flexible. All the Jedi are." The other clones moved to comply, but Gaffin had left even before the captain had issued his command. The boy had decided he'd be dyed red and black and grow horns before he willingly walked into a 3-day-long meditation session. He inched his way along the tight confines of the vents, making himself weightless with the Force while pushing and pulling himself with the tips of his fingers and toes. He was 14,
Makes you
soon to be
stealthier,
15, but he hadn't quite hit his growth spurt yet, and was making full use of his size before he lost it. Lots of learners had expressed a desire to grow quickly, but Master Yoda was smaller than all of them, and he was Grand Master. It wasn't long before he found himself edging along the ceiling of the impromptu science laboratory that the researchers and scientists had been using to do their work. He stopped when he was just above Dr. Sheena, a Syrian scientist who worked for the High Chancellor as one of his staff. It was apparently rare for her to work outside of his gaze, and Gaffin knew why. Dr. Sheena was jumpier than a loft cat in a spice rack. Smirking, he stealthily undid the bolts holding the grate he was looking through, concentrating on each screw with the force, one by one. Before long, he was lifting the panel silently away and dropping down to land 3 feet in front of Dr. Sheena, who had been looking down at her data pad when he landed. Almost walking directly into the Padawan, before pausing and snapping a scowling face up at him, she did not react well to his presence.
I wouldn't either.
"Hey, Doc, how's it?" she screamed, so loud and so suddenly that Gaffin almost didn't precognate fast enough to cover his ears. Every one of the beings in the room
That's
dropped
what you
what they
get.
were doing to look over at the pair, a sudden stillness taking hold. Gaffin smiled sheepishly and was about to say something in an attempt to break the tension when 8 clones shoved into the room, rifles out. It took a couple of minutes for everything to recombobulate
Oh
after
my
that,
gosh.
but eventually all the scientists were back to
14-year-olds,
work,
am I
the
right?
clones went back to guard duty, and Dr. Sheena went back to referencing her datapad, only rarely interspersing a glare into the mix for Gaffin's sake. "Why are you wound up so tight?" Gaffin asked. For some reason, his words seemed to annoy her even more than his surprise did. "First of all, I'm always tense around Jedi. You are dangerous, illogical, and problems seem to go out of their way to find you. Even, or should I say, especially, the little ones like you."
Yes, because they're children. They don't know better. They're dumb. They're dumb sometimes. 14-year-olds do not have the best ideas. They can have good ideas. They're not the best ideas. I get it. I get it. She doesn't seem like she's a kid person, and frankly, I can't blame her. If I was getting jump scared by a 14-year-old all the time, I wouldn't be a kid person either.
She snapped. "More like we go out of our way to find them," he muttered. "And secondly," she continued, "and I'm not that little. There are scarier things out there than Asajj Ventress
Oh
and
my
her
gosh.
separatist."
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I just say, when I watch movies nowadays, so for example, The Little Mermaid, I think Ariel in that movie is like 14 years old. Doesn't much matter. She's still like, she's younger than 18. And she's like, "Dad," I'm practically an adult. I can make my own decisions. When I was like 7, I was like, "Yeah, Ariel, you're so right. You're basically grown up. You go run away. You go meet that Prince Eric. You guys are meant to be together." And now that I'm older, I'm like, "Ariel, you need to be quiet, please. You do not know what you are talking about." So it makes me laugh when, and I mean, it is accurate because you really think you're like, I'm basically an adult. When you're like 14 or 16, you're like, I'm so close to that. I'm like, no. I don't even feel like an adult all the time. Yeah, that's what happens when you get older. You sober up a little bit. So I kind of like that because it is pretty accurate.
"Friends, if your Jedi magic was half as impressive as your order says it is, then you should have seen this before we did." As if to prove her words, she walked over and thrust her datapad into his hands. Gaffin hummed and nodded as he looked down at the datapad, though he understood nothing from inspecting
Yep.
the odd data sequences and jargoned results written all over the digital file. "Do you see?" she asked.
I need an
"I
adultier
see
adult.
a datapad I can't read," Gaffin said blankly. Dr. Sheena huffed, snatching the pad out of his hands and then showing it again from her hands. "This part right here," she said, pointing to a box filled with text and a long sequence of numbers and letters written in Bothan. "These are the results of a hyperwave spectrogram analysis. Do you see this number here, after the dot?" Gaffin nodded. "Yeah, that's Bothan for 3.7, right?"
Talk about a
"That's
forehead.
close
Look
enough,
at
I
her
guess.
forehead.
The
It's
point
like
is that there's never supposed to
30
be a
head.
number after that decimal. It makes no sense. It's too much." "Too much what? What do you mean?" Gaffin asked, a trickle of unease dripping its way between his thoughts. Dr. Sheena was always a raw bundle of nerves, but this was a bit much even for her. He could feel her panic, feel how much she was suppressing it.
She does look like
the
a
doctor
xenomorph.
was genuinely terrified.
You idiot! It's a hyperwave! Don't tell me you don't know about hyperwaves!
She said,
A
incredulous.
hyperwave!
Can you
Oh no, not the
meditate on them?
hyperwaves.
Because if not, I don't think Master Ren'Phi would really...
No, it's got nothing to do with your dumb magic.
Look, every time an object moves in or out of hyperspace, it leaves a gravitational wave, a hyperwave. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The bigger the stone, the bigger the wave. Okay, Gaffin said. But don't we use radiation to track hyperspace travel? Yes, because hyperwaves are normally too faint to be used reliably. A single Venator-class Star Destroyer has a hyperwave reading of 0.00003. That's not even detectable by a planet-side scanner.
My brain has turned
Gaffin
off.
felt like the floor was slowly dropping
My
out from
brain
underneath
just
him.
shut down. I was like, numbers.
But then why can't we even record this? Didn't lots of sensors get triggered? Yes, hyperwaves are harder to read, but they travel much farther and faster than Coronu radiation, which dissipates relatively quickly when compared to the rolling momentum of a hyperwave. But what does that mean? There aren't any Confederate forces or Republic forces operating outside the galaxy. Isn't there a natural phenomenon that could explain this? Gaffin asked.
That's what they're
Dr.
figuring
Sheena shook
out.
her head and slid her finger across the screen, swiping to a new page of the report. There are sometimes special meteors with certain mineral elements which can react with tachyon fields to briefly enter hyperspace, but the largest one of those ever recorded had an estimated wave of 0.000000007.
I hope she doesn't call me. I hope she doesn't call me an idiot for not knowing what a tachyon wave is. The brain go brr. It's a Friday night. I wasn't prepared for this.
And it only traversed a quarter of a light minute before dropping out of hyperspace. It can't be that. Well, what about Purgles? Space whales are pretty large, and they can drag their wounded into hyperspace, so
Ooh,
maybe it's just a bunch of extragalactic Purgles towing something? She looked at him flatly. Extragalactic space whales towing something with a higher mass than potentially the entire Republic fleet. Do I actually have to tell you how stupid that sounds? Well, it's...
Oh my gosh, she really got pissed off by him. Holy cow, she's not pulling any punches today. She's like, I am mad and you are gonna know about it. You will know about it. I am... Yeah, you are gonna know how mad I am today.
It's not some giant monster, so what are you even so scared of? The unknown? Gaffin shot back. No, you discount parlor trick salesman's apprentice. Think. It's not natural, and it doesn't belong to us or the Separatists.
She's not pulling punches, holy cow. Oh my gosh.
He stuttered, flustered and blushing, but drawing a blank.
It's a fleet!
She shouted.
An extragalactic fleet! A huge fleet! A veritable solar system of stuff just got thrown into close orbit of our galaxy, and it is most likely stuff that belongs to someone, understand?
Gaffin felt chills. Well, wait, he said. How do we even know they're dangerous? She looked up from the pad, showing him a huge red radius near the system. A line underneath it said, projected movement potential. We don't. What we do know is that they have a larger fleet than us, than potentially any single military to date. And that is as good as knowing they are hostile.
And that
Gaffin
is only
said nothing
a
after that,
portion
letting the information be absorbed
of the
into
Imperium.
him.
Oh
so,
my
what
gosh.
are you doing now? He asked, almost numb. We are trying to figure out exactly where this fleet is supposed to be right now, she said, tapping away in a frenzy. Aren't you going to report this to Master Ren'Phi? What for? I already sent a report to the Chancellor, and I told you, you can't do anything about this. You might as well not be here. We're too far from the fighting to get clone reinforcements all the way out here, now for a week at least, she snapped. Well, no, we can't do anything by ourselves, Gaffin admitted. But we could, negotiate for help from nearby systems. Reinforcements, maybe? They don't have to be clones, he ventured. She put her datapad down with a clatter, and he was sure she was going to yell at him again. But when she turned back to look at him, she wasn't glaring at him. Well, she wasn't just glaring at him. She was also blushing. Oh,
What?
frag. Right. I guess we could do that.
Huh? Huh?
It had been nearly a week since Orion and his allies had
Why
been
was she
stranded in
blushing?
deep space by the failing of the fleet's navigators. Far too long by his estimation. The chapter master had watched as every single three-eyed psyker across his broad fleet, and those of his allies, reported the same horrid chime. The Emperor was dead. There could be no other truth. At least this was what they howled as they
You
were
exaggerate.
dragged
You're
from their
just in
viewing
another
ports and
galaxy.
sight
You're too
stations.
far away.
The problem behind this was twofold. Firstly, word of the Emperor's evident demise was spreading panic and heresy through the fleets like a plague born by words. Fed by the fear they faced in their becalmed state, it had been all Orion could do to instate order where he could and flush chaos into space whenever he found he was unable to subdue it. Secondly, whether the Emperor was dead or distant, the navigators were almost entirely useless, and that left them floating in the void with nothing faster than a beam of light to travel by. It would take them hundreds or thousands of years to reach the edge of the galaxy at materialistic speeds. He needed warp travel back online, and he couldn't wait around for the navigators to get a hold of themselves. Already, Chapter Master Javik Thune of the Crimson Razors had departed with his entire chapter fleet, along with nearly half of the Astra Militarum and a quarter of Battlefleet Zektek.
Ooh.
He didn't know whether to call the man
that's a lot of
fool
guys.
for charging into the warp without navigators, or a visionary for doing what Orion was about to do now. Black Templars and their unofficial successors were not known for their tact, discipline, or patience, but galaxy be damned if they weren't decisive. Sir?
Discipline?
Asked Brother
I feel like
Tordennis.
they're good with discipline.
He stood behind the HoloLens operator, waiting to be signaled to begin. Orion felt his face tighten, but nodded, standing to address the glossy obsidian lens pointed towards him by the tech adept and his boxy contraption. When the ancient space marine saw the blue light on the surface of the device flicker to life, he began to speak. Brothers of the Skywatch, cousins of the Tempered Hands, allies of the Astra Militarum and Battlefleet Zektek, it is time for elucidation. All of you have heard the damned portents cried out by our navigators, and I have now gathered enough information to say with certainty that the truth of our situation is far stranger than we could have expected, yet less dreadful than we may have feared. Our astrogators have been manually observing and cataloging the constellations around us in an attempt to discern our precise location outside of the galaxy. All of their findings return with one conclusion: the constellations are wrong. Either the universe itself has been impossibly rearranged, or we are not looking at our own galaxy. Our attempt to breach the Cicatrix Maledictum has somehow resulted in our forces being transported unthinkable distances away from our Emperor. He is not gone. We are.
Ooh,
He paused
yeah,
there,
yeah, you are
letting
correct.
his words sink in before
You are
continuing.
correct, sir. Mhm.
Now that we know what situation we face, we have only one recourse. We must enter the nearby galaxy and take stock of our new situation once within it. Perhaps we shall find a way to return among these strange stars. And if not, it may be that we were meant to arrive here first and prepare the way for our Imperium to come.
Oh, I got chills.
In
Oh my
either
gosh,
case,
I got chills there.
I call now upon your courage, your faith, and your strength, for we will need them. There shall be no reinforcement, no resupply. The Codex says nothing about this kind of situation, nor does any other protocol. Our path is ours to carve, lest it be carved into us instead. Fate has thrown us far from our undying Emperor and expects us to wither under its burden. But fate is a fool, for fate does not yet understand that distance and time are mere petty obstacles when faced with the determined faith of the Imperium of man. He took his seat then, watching the lens adjust to track him. Steel yourselves. We go forth to find the unknown and make it kneel before the will of man. Faith is the duty of the righteous,
Oh, I love
and
that.
only in death
does duty end.
Yes.
Go now,
Yes.
and prepare to do yours. He nodded, and the light flicked off. Orion turned to look at the line of his assembled captains, standing near the back of the room. Send out the orders to redeploy the navigators. Chain them to their stations if need be. All I need them to do is give us a direction and keep the ships near each other. If they won't or cannot, shoot them. Ensure the replacement is present. And if the replacements do not capitulate, asked 5th Captain Anar Solston.
Woo.
The chapter master turned his bright yellow eyes on the man, intense as twin rings of unblinking stars. We are departing via warp space at 1300 hours sharp. This will not change, whether we have navigators or not.
Whoa.
O eternal God Emperor, preserve us from the dangers of the void.
Oh. Bam. 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 Oh yeah, they're going. They're going. I feel so bad for the Star Wars galaxy. I do a little bit. Not too much though. I have a preference. That is for sure. Look at that dutiful Steve writing down everything. What a good Steve. I pet to Steve. Bum, 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 bum. Steve. Oh, that was the end. Okay. Oh, these are so easy to watch. Like, they go by so quickly. Like, that was 20 minutes that went by and, like, it felt like it went by so fast. I love it. Oh, next one, next one, next one. Oh, is it gonna be loud? Hang on. I hope it's not too loud. I have to adjust it because the beginning is super loud. Thank you, Red Tail Wolf, for the bits. Part 3. Ooh. Oil leak. Ooh.
What is wrong with the ship? 8th Captain Nexus Lente yelled over the sounding alarms and creaking rumbling of the battle barge, Master of Light. It sounded as if the whole vessel was being beaten by an endless rain of power fists, and while Chapter Master Orion remained composed as he sat within his command throne, his gauntleted hands were tight about the armrests, and he would have fractured the stone if it had not been a steel command throne. He had seen near unceasing war for over 700 years. Was this how the Emperor ended his service? He shoved.
I'm gonna want subtitles? Okay. It says they are unavailable. So as much as I might want the subtitles, it's not available. RIP. Sorry. I would put them up if it was an option.
The thought back into the corners of his mind. Best to consider such things after the event in question, and the event in question had been going on for hours, slowly getting worse and worse. What's wrong with the ship? Captain Aurelian repeated. We're flying through the damned warp without a functioning navigator. That's what's wrong with the Emperor damned ship!
Okay.
He yelled.
That might have been a bad
It
call.
isn't warp turbulence, my lords, shouted one of the tech adepts, her wired, integrated body twitching and convulsing somewhat as the machine's spirit of the vessel fed her information directly. It's the Gellerfield, my lords, she yelled a moment later. Emperor's teeth, the captain cursed. Prepare for warp incursions, Orion bellowed, raising himself unsteadily.
Wait,
from his
what
pitching,
happened to
quaking
your
throne.
Gellerfield?
No, my lord, it isn't like that, the
What?
tech adept yelled over the din of the bucking
Okay,
ship
cool.
and the
I was,
ringing
like,
clicking of drawn weapons.
Confused.
Report, he barked. The Gellerfield isn't failing, it's too powerful. It's not meeting enough resistance. My lord, if we do not power it down to an adequate output, the excess energy will continue to build. It's going to tear the ship apart.
Oh. So, in this world, is it different that the warp is not... The Star Wars galaxy isn't as, like, jacked up. So they basically, there's, like, no warp. So instead of, like, trying to push through honey, like they would maybe in the, like, Imperium, you're gliding through oil where it's not as viscous. And you can just... You want to hear that again? There's not enough suffering. Let's change that. Cracks knuckles. I actually got one set of knuckles to crack. Silver Storm, thank you so much for resubscribing. And Shadow Raven, thank you for joining the Legion. I hope you're enjoying stream. This is good. I love this. Peak sound effect. Yes, I am a voice actor. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Why do you do this to me? It's 2:30 a.m. I am doing nothing to you. Except I'm having a good time. Oily, ew. Ew. No. Just regular ASMR, Aurelia. What do you mean only one set? Whose hand did you sever? Like, only one hand got all five, like, all the knuckles cracked. The other one did not crack at all. That's why. That is why. Ghost Justice, welcome to the Legion and subscribing with Prime. That's a great way to do it. Best way to do it.
Are you seriously suggesting weakening the Gellerfield during warp travel? Has Horus stolen your sense? Captain Aurelian boomed. Do it, the chapter master ordered. What? Aurelian yelled. As you command, the tech adept called, but Aurelian was on her almost before she could move, wrapping one of his massive gauntlets around her skull from behind.
Bro!
Take that field down, and I'll take you down.
That's insubordination! Excuse me, you might have a cool name, but that is insubordination, sir! She is doing her job! How dare you interfere?
He growled over the speakers in his helmet. Captain Aurelian knew that they had little chance of survival if a demonic incursion should occur, even with a flickering, fluctuating Gellerfield. But there would be no chance of survival if the whole field failed at once. Captain, get off her! Crewmen, do it now! Orion roared, taking a few steps in their direction.
Bro, this...
Captain Aurelian did not release the woman, though neither did he rip her head from her shoulders as her trembling hand reached up to the crank lever on her console and slowly pulled it down below halfway. As she did, the whole ship began to calm, the rattling and pounding diminishing until completely vanished. Gellerfield holding at 31% output, she reported. There was a pause then, as everyone, with the exception of the tech adept herself, took a moment to express their relief as tense muscles slackened and held breaths rushed out as sighs. Even Captain Aurelian himself couldn't help grinning inside his helmet from the lifting of the sudden danger, though he had not opened his hand. Though Orion had also breathed out a gust of anxiety, his eyes had never left his subordinates.
Yeah.
Captain Aurelian, your penance is already going to be severe.
Yeah, discipline
the chapter
him.
master said through gritted teeth. And it's only going to get worse the longer you ignore me. Release now. The captain opened his hand and pulled away from the crewman like a man who had picked up a
Ooh, something I didn't think about. We're gonna have two instances of Master and, well, I guess Padawan. We have Master Padawan on the other side, and now we have, like, a Master and, like, kind of, not trainee. He's 100 years old. Like, he's had 100 years of battle service, so... But we're gonna get to see, like, the difference. Apprentice. It's a Friday. I can't think. This will be an interesting, Comparison we'll get to see.
blowing coal by mistake, stepping back from the tech adept's control alcove.
I wonder if they'll, like, be foils of one another. The two apprentices, because we have one that's very much hands-on, and also a mature adult, versus a slacker kid.
My apologies, he said to the chapter master, before turning to offer them to the adept as well, though it grated on him to do so. To you as well. The woman stared straight forward, shoulders trembling only slightly, though she did offer a stiff nod, not trusting her voice to speak. Back to your station, Captain. Crew, report. Ship formation is at cohesion. The report came from a servitor, half fused into the wall of his control station, fingers mindlessly clicking against keys as readings scrolled across his unblinking bloodshot eyes. It is confirmed, sir. Nearly all ships are experiencing the same turbulence we are, but with the exception of the Atlas of Steel, all ships are remaining within range of the main fleet. The eddies and currents of the warp appear placid, my lord. Contact the fleet. Give them instructions to level their Gellerfield outputs out. Tell them it is a direct order from me. Yes, my lord. Orion stared at the large hololithic displays projected before him, eyes wide as he watched the fleet formation queue up. So many ships, all still lined up, all still on the path, all still alive. He almost wanted to call for yet another confirmation. How was it possible? Ship formation cohesion? This many hours into the warp? Normally only about
like
70 or
bad.
60.
This is bad for the Star Wars universe, because they're like, we are expecting to take heavy losses, and when they don't, they're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, they are going to tear through this galaxy. They're going to tear through this galaxy. But the downside is, maybe the more destruction they bring, the more they stir up the warp. It was a balance.
50% of the fleet arrived at their destination in any kind of formation, with a certain amount arriving before the rest of the fleet, a certain amount arriving long after, and a disturbing portion simply never being heard from again. But full formation cohesion in the warp was unheard of, impossible, and yet... Give me the last known status of the Atlas of Steel. What kind of ship is it? The chapter master ordered. Yes, Lord. It appears to be a Universe-class mass conveyor, one of the 5 we managed to secure for the evacuation. The cargo here is listed as several megatons of ceramite, but they are likely carrying survivors from Khalistan and Jubilation of Tal. They appeared to be increasing their Gellerfield outputs just before they pulled ahead. Feth! One of the captains spat. Has my message been sent yet? Orion asked. Yes, my lord. Confirmation sendings have been received from all ships. Most are complying. Most? Growled the venerable space marine. Yes, my lord. The Hand of Catastrophe, the Heart of Judgment, and the Pillar of Termination have not yet lowered their output levels. Their ships are still shaking apart. Damn those green crews. Send the message again. Make it clear that they will be destroyed if they persist. If not by the turbulence, then by me at the conclusion of this jump. Tell them! The crewman acknowledged again, and Orion sat down, laying against the throne. There was nothing to do now, but wait to arrive. He wondered briefly if the Atlas of Steel was lost, or if it would arrive months late, or if it was already there, waiting for him and his fleet, along with whatever had been there already, waiting for them.
So, they're gonna meet the Atlas of Steel first. This'll be interesting.
By the core, Dr. Sheena muttered. Her wide eyes reflected the engine lights and sublight trails of hundreds of ships. The new armada, for that was what it was, ranged from the sleek teardrop design of tens of Conqueror-class assault ships to the lopsided hulks of KDY-class sea frigates. And where they had started with only 3 Venerator-class Star Destroyers, 2 of which the Chancellor had provided for them, now they had nearly 30. I had no...
That's a lot. That is a lot. Oh boy. That is a lot. Like 3 Star Destroyers is like, oh man, that's a lot of guys. Whew.
No idea that Pazab was this close to Rothana, she muttered for perhaps the third time. Rothana, an industrialized world surrounded by shipyards, was technically a subsidiary of Kuat Drive Yards, or at least working in that capacity. That much Dr. Sheena had known already. What she had not known about was that it was the rings of Rothana, not the well-known shipyards at planet Kuat itself, that was supplying the Republic with over 70% of their war machines.
Oh,
I
70%?
say,
This is really bad for them. If that is where they get 70% of their war machines, and the Imperium is popping up really close to, like, there's another planet nearby that they're popping up really close to. That's really bad for them. Because if they get to that planet first, it's their toast. 70% of the war machines. Hosed.
it was a surprise to me as well.
Said Jedi Knight Ren-Fi, arms crossed as he stood beside Dr. Sheena on the bridge, both looking out through the huge viewing ports.
It would appear that the location of Rothana has been a closely guarded secret until now. It is fortunate that Kuat of Kuat saw it as prudent to deploy the defense fleet here at our request.
Nearly the entire KDY corporate security Starfleet. I have to say, it's a surprisingly proportional response, Dr. Sheena said. What she didn't say out loud, but wondered deeply, was just how the Supreme Chancellor had managed to coax this kind of reaction out of Kuat, a man known to be as stubborn as he was rich.
Bribes.
She looked around, only
Bribes.
now noticing the two conspicuous absences in the room. General, she said cautiously, where is CT-1238? And where did your annoyingly insightful apprentice get off to?
Captain Kraken is currently on the Belajor. He was quite insistent that we be commanding different command ships,
said Ren-Fi. He shrugged at his own words.
To be honest, I think he was just eager to command one of those updated Venators. The captain has always been very keen on his starships. As for Gaffin, he's still meditating. He will continue to do so for another hour.
Sheena tilted her head at the Jedi. You know, if he hadn't convinced me to report this to you, we might still be sitting here with only 3 ships. The Trandoshan made a strange hiss, which Dr. Sheena realized was a laugh.
That is precisely why the last hour will be his 3rd hour only.
She didn't quite understand how that explained anything, and was about to say as much, when suddenly... Alert! We've got activity! Both scientists and Jedi snapped their gazes forward, eyes searching instinctively as they waited for the sensor operator to elaborate. But Dr. Sheena was shocked yet again, as her eyes picked out a distortion?
What is it, Ensign?
The Jedi asked. It's... I don't know, sir. I've never seen readings like these, the clone said, leaning over his console as if he was simply not seeing it correctly. Dr. Sheena rushed over to the station, looking at the readings herself.
Well, guess,
Ren-Fi ordered. I honestly don't know, sir. Black hole, maybe?
What?
The Jedi hissed.
wish it was a black hole.
No, Dr. Sheena said.
You wish it was a black hole.
Singularity.
It's she stuttered, eyes shooting between the readings on her screen and the growing, rippling pool of purple and black energy.
What is it, Doctor? Tell me,
Ren-Fi insisted. It's a gate, she said. Well, miss, the clone beside her said, your gate is opening pretty wide. Diameter of the anomaly is 1 kilometer and growing.
Let's get ready to
inform
rumble.
the fleet,
Ren-Fi ordered.
Have them form up around us and back off. We don't want to come off as any more hostile than we have to.
Are you insane? Dr. Sheena said suddenly, spinning to face the Jedi.
What?
If we can get the drop on them, then we should. Even with the fleet we have here, the Armada, it still might not be enough. We have to use every advantage.
Doctor, I appreciate your advice.
Oh,
but
she's
this
right, though.
is my command. I will
See, it's bad either way. I don't think you can... I don't think you can negotiate, but also if you, like, take them out, like, you're kind of hosed. It's just bad all around for them.
not fire on anyone without a more defined reason. And by assembling ourselves into such an overly hostile formation, we give strangers an excuse to attack first.
Dr. Sheena grit her teeth, but nodded. She knew she wouldn't get anywhere arguing with him, so she watched as the fleet began to assemble itself, as the visible, writhing distortion grew larger and larger. And then, something is emerging from the anomaly, the clone at the sensors reported.
How big? How many?
Asked Renfai,
They're
but
say
there was no
one.
need to answer, and the clone didn't bother, too stupefied by what was transpiring before them. From the pulsating sphere of unnatural, swirling energy, a single unthinkably enormous ship slid out of the breach. It was like nothing.
Oh my gosh, they're gonna have to deal with it, and then like, oh my gosh, it's insanely large. And then the Imperium rolls up like, hey, that was one of our small ships. Oh no! This is so bad for them. This is so bad. They're gonna get... Oh man. They're just gonna be a stain in space.
Dr. Sheena had ever seen before, and she briefly wondered if she was looking at some kind of space station and not any kind of ship classification. But as its city-sized engines roared to fiery life, she realized in horror that this was no stationary construct, but some kind of truly gargantuan starship. By the Force, the clone beside her breathed. Dr. Sheena looked down at the console and then back up at the unnaturally bloated craft. 12
Unnaturally
kilometers
bloated.
long, 3 kilometers high, 2.5 wide.
Unnaturally bloated. Excuse me, I think the engineers would be insulted that you said it was unnaturally bloated. I think that is very natural. I think the design intent was clear. Very clear.
She reported in place of the clone. And it's damaged, she added.
Confirm that!
Renfai ordered the clone. The trooper did as he was bid, looking down over his screens and tapping on his controls. She's right, sir. It's venting atmosphere around several of its decks. Power fluctuations are being detected all across its structure. No shields detected, and it seems to be making its way towards Pazab.
They think it's gonna be easy pickings because this one is super damaged. Oh no.
Did going to attempt a landing?
Renfai asked. I don't... Wait. Sir, one of the ships of the fleet is not obeying the muster at our lines, the clone reported.
What? Who?
Renfai asked. It's the Belajor, sir.
Captain Kraken. Hail him.
There was a pause then, and Dr. Sheena took the opportunity to look at the sensor suite again. Sure enough, there was Captain Kraken's Venator, far out of line with the rest of the fleet, and on a clear intercept course with the outsider ship. From the looks of it, he had been moving towards it from the very moment it appeared.
Well, is he responding?
No, sir.
Interference? Jamming?
Renfai posited. Not from the looks of it, sir. Contact with the rest of the fleet is operating normally. It almost looks like he's just...
Ignoring us,
Renfai growled.
Order the nearest ships to tractor beam his Venator. Drag him back here.
I'm sorry, General, but it looks like he's out of range. Should we pursue?
No, he's on an intercept course with the ship. If we give chase after him, it will look like an attack.
I bet you the kid is on that ship. He's totally on that ship, and he's like, we gotta attack it. I meditated, and my brain says we must attack.
Then what, sir? What do we do? Dr. Sheena had never seen a Trandoshan sweat, most likely because it was impossible. But at that moment, she figured Renfai was the closest to sweating of any of his species. For several moments, he simply stood, arms crossed, face stiff, frozen. Sir? Captain Kraken had his orders, and he was good at following them. Not just because he was the best damn Venator pilot in the entire Gar. Not just because he could thread a hyperspace jump through a Zygerian slave collar. Not just because the enemy capital ship was so
Order
stupidly
66?
large. Captain Kraken was a good soldier. All the clones on the Belajor were good soldiers. They knew what the Republic expected of them, what the Supreme Chancellor ordered from them. They knew why they were made. To be good soldiers. Good soldiers follow orders. He activated the special jump setting on the Belajor, disabling the hyperdrive inhibitor safety.
As if the Star Wars universe wasn't already at a serious disadvantage.
The captain waited until the massive ship completely swallowed up all the front-facing viewports, until there was no possible way that he could proceed forward in any direction and not slam directly into the nearly unimaginable hulk of thrust and metal. And, with a blank, satisfied smile, Captain Kraken, loyal clone commander of the Galactic Republic, activated his ship's hyperdrive and was no more.
Oh, this is so good. Oh my gosh. Next one, next one, next one. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you have too much time, dude. This is amazing. Can I get you more time? Thank you. Thank you for the bits, Red Tail Wolf. You're too kind. You're really too kind. Brothers lost. No, not the brothers. Not the brothers.
No forgiveness, no retreat.
Renfai was yelling as though his voice could reach the clone captain. Dr. Sheena felt a strange pang echo within her as she watched, her eyes fixed to the sensor readings as Captain Kraken's Venator briefly paused and oriented itself in an all-too-familiar way. She saw the sensors register a sudden spike in power levels, and then, as another reading streaked across the screen, her eyes snapped up in open disbelief. Kranu radiation. "Captain!" the Jedi called one last time, panic riddling his voice like maggots in rotten meat. It was over in an instant. A terrible, shining instant. Renfai's wide jaws gaped suddenly as he gave voice to an inhuman scream, a reptilian sound of teeth and tongue and throaty horror which reverberated in the air. Dr. Sheena felt it as well, felt the cold, sickly panic rising within her, the realization that something terrible and permanent had just transpired before her own eyes.
This is bad.
The knight collapsed, overwhelmed, his claws grasping his broad head as if to hold it together as bloodshot streaks painted the yellows around his corneas, and thick veins of drool ran between his peg-like teeth in uncontrolled rivulets. And yet, Dr. Sheena empathized with the Trandoshan then, more than at any other time. a hyperspace ram. Illegal under Republic law, illegal under Separatist law. Even the Hutts forbade such unthinkable use of hyperdrive technology. Even the old Sith knew enough about the...
Welcome to the Warhammer universe, where we commit war crimes on the daily. Woo! Buckle up, buddy. Buckle up. It's only gonna get worse from here.
danger of that kind of trend to avoid it whenever possible. And Captain Kraken had just broken 1,000,000 laws across the breadth of known space to kill the flagship of a potential enemy. A potential enemy. Dr. Sheena liked to think of herself as heavily pragmatic. She was fast to know what should be done, even in the face of petty moral considerations and cultural aesthetics. Logic was ruthless, and she liked to think of herself as an acolyte of logic. But this was madness on a level she could never have expected and would never have recommended. The outsider ship had been hundreds of times more massive than the Venator that had been smashed into it, but clearly it had not been shielded, nor even as armored as a ship of that size should have been. The entire front end of the massive vessel was blown open and curling away like a junker artist's rendition of a flower made from a steel can. Blue and white scars of superheated metal glowed like filigree across every scar, every rent and tear. "Rescue," Renfai muttered, still on the floor. "Sir?" asked one of the clones, the captain of the ship.
Because he's experiencing everything now.
"Rescue!" Renfai yelled, rising to his feet unnaturally, deck plates bending from the force of whatever energy field he had used to lift himself. "All Venators, all KDY vessels, move in towards the outsider ship. Commence emergency rescue operations. Save as many as you can."
I'm thinking.
Yes, General.
So, it's not Order 66. It's similar, but Palpatine wanted the ship gone because he just thought, oh, it was one ship. But he done messed up. So it's not Order 66. That's not yet. That's not it yet, because the other clones aren't attacking him. That's what happened. My brain was like, what? Seeing Order 66 definitely threw me off. I was like, wait. Now I understand.
Called the captain of the ship, and the clones manning the communication systems got to work relaying his orders. Dr. Sheena said nothing. After all, what could she say? She couldn't even pull her eyes away from the cloud of metallic debris forming around the carcass of the vessel. Distantly, she was impressed by the ruggedness of the vessel's engines, still burning, turning the ship in a sputtering, slow spiral, despite its structure having been disemboweled. She didn't want to think about it, wanted to look away from the glowing metal, away from the encroaching Venators surrounding the ship, away from the cloud of debris. But too much of that debris was squirming. Too much of it was shaped like... Finally, her eyes broke from the scene as she threw up onto the floor.
Ooh.
It wasn't much. Her breakfast had been light, and so she had recovered when the sensors operator next to her called out his next observation. "More anomalies, sir." "How many? How far?" Renfai almost groaned. "Near our edge of the system, General. Current readings showed 20... One moment, sir."
200.
The sensor operator began checking his equipment, and Dr. Sheena, still standing nearby, couldn't help but turn back to look at his console screen. Her eyes bulged. "Withdraw the fleet!"
Get out of here. Get out of here.
More are still appearing. A transmission is being detected, being sent out from the downed dreadnought. "Intercept that transmission. Continue the rescue operation." "Yes, General." "Are you listening to me?" Dr. Sheena shouted. "I heard you, Doctor," Renfai said. "And?" she insisted.
Yeah.
"And I believe
Listen to
the
her.
outsiders will see that we are trying to rescue their people and will not open fire on us in the midst of that. That's not a given. They could just as easily blame us for its current..." "Transmission intercepted, sir." "Play it," Renfai ordered.
Your host.
The clone
your
obeyed,
host. You better
playing
run.
the message
It's
over
too
the
late.
speakers.
You should
It
have
was
been
a
running
man,
already.
or at least it sounded like one. He, or it, was almost shouting, his voice rich with panic and zeal of a kind that sent shivers down Dr. Sheena's spine. The language was alien, guttural, and yet not nearly as alien as the Doctor would have thought from an extragalactic species.
Oh, interesting.
Get the protocol droid working on deciphering that,
Renfai ordered.
High
Yes, sir.
Gothic.
Update me on the anomalies.
The Jedi said. Right. Sir, you're not going to believe this.
Speak, trooper.
I'm counting well over 200 vessels, General.
Then
I killed it. I killed it. They're like 10. They're like 12. No, 20. And then I was like 200. 200. Well, over 200.
we still outnumber them. The KDY fleet is massive. Well over 1,000 ships to discourage an attack.
Sir, the smallest vessel in their fleet is 2 kilometers long. The largest I'm seeing is 12, maybe 13 kilometers long. And it's not just 1 or 2. I'm detecting 6, no, more of such vessels. General, they are accelerating.
Open hailing frequencies. Try to contact them.
The clone nodded.
No. This is bad. The Jedi is a lizard man. They're totally... Everyone on that deck is basically Xenos to them, except for maybe the clones. Oh no. Oh no, this is so bad for them. This is so bad.
Putting on a thick communications headset as he began to scan frequencies for active use. Stop this! Look at that fleet! We can't fight off that many dreadnoughts! We have none of our own! Everything in that outsider armada dwarfs us by...
Doctor, I can appreciate how stressful this must be for you. But this is now an active operation. If you cannot control yourself, then I encourage you to return to the laboratory.
But are you mad? Look at how large their ships are!
Strength does not come from size alone.
Yes. But you could argue that the Space Marines, that doesn't apply to them in this case. I don't know about you, but if I saw a ship that was like 8 to 10 times more massive than any ship that I've ever seen, and we don't know whether or not it's an enemy, I'd be running. I'd be running. This is bad.
This is no time for your philosophical moralizing.
Yep.
That fleet is going to eat us alive
Agreed.
if we aren't gone before they close with us. Stop acting like a peacemaker and start acting like a commander.
And they're not even the World Eaters.
Snapper, clear. Please escort the doctor back to the laboratory. Stand guard outside and make sure the science staff stays safe.
Aye, General. Come on, miss. One coaxed as both came along either side of Dr. Sheena, clearly intending to seize her by the arms if she did not comply willingly. Dr. Sheena scowled, but would not surrender her dignity to the Jedi, turning without a word and walking towards the lift which would take her back down towards the other members of her team. But before she left, she bore witness to the following exchange, an exchange that ensured she would be dragged out of the room, screaming to all the ship that Renfai was a fool. She bore witness to the next translated message and final actions of the gutted dreadnought. The sight and sound of it would mark her for the rest of her breaths. Sir, we've got another transmission going out from the damaged dreadnought.
Is that translation complete?
Aye, sir. TC4 on the Statesman has completed a translation matrix, applying it now. They all waited for a few seconds, all but Dr. Sheena and her escort, who moved slowly but steadily towards the doors, both the clones and the doctor being more than slightly curious in hearing what the split vessel was trying to transmit. They didn't have to wait long, as the frenzied voice of the ship's captain blared over the comm speakers.
Okay, the captions didn't show up. I got the biggest chills. They are so screwed. They are so screwed. Yeah, someone put it in there. It's better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself. They said they're going to destroy the enemy ship. Oh, you're so in trouble. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. Oh, they're gonna get their faces kicked in.
Everyone was stunned, shocked, horrified. The outsider dreadnought had just exploded, its hull already a glowing wreck from the unexpected and unbelievable hyperspace ramming maneuver Captain Kraken had just performed tens of minutes ago. And as destructive as that had been, this was somehow even worse. The massive, rent vessel had appeared to darken and then blossom outward with silent, radiant light.
Oh,
Spikes
no.
had been wearing his helmet, a habit he maintained even in his new role as captain of his own Venator-class Star Destroyer. The lenses
That helmet
darkened to
will
shield
not
him
save
from the sudden
you.
flash, but most of his bridge crew were not so lucky. Either blinded or gawking, they watched as the explosion began to spread out, sweeping through the Venators and KDY vessels that had positioned themselves around the dreadnought. "Full reverse!" he called. No one responded. That was understandable. What they were seeing was rather shocking, but Spikes was dead to novelty and unimpressed by power. He drew his blaster pistol and fired it into the floor, the sound
Whoa.
of heat jolting his crew back from the oblivion of disbelief. "Full reverse!" he repeated, and the clone crew scrambled to obey. Spikes had earned his name at the Battle of Jabim. He lost all his pod brothers in that fight, and had been separated behind enemy lines when the nationalists of the muddy hellscape had overwhelmed Shelter Base. Alone, standing atop a rapidly sinking pile composed of the burnt bodies of his brothers, he had held for 3 days. 3 days. They came at him every hour, on the hour, for 3 days.
Okay,
He
that's
used
bad
all
planning.
his power packs, all his brothers' power packs, all their thermal detonators, all of their equipment that wasn't sucked into the planet's muddy maw. With every assault, the Separatists would lose more men, and after every assault, he survived. Eventually, he was
Yeah.
rescued
I mean,
by the
that's cool.
Padawan pack, led by Anakin Skywalker, and was named after an intercepted transmission sent by the Nationalists just prior to his retrieval. "Avoid the southern descent. Single enemy position. No strategic importance. Assault will bleed you. The position has spikes." The term had been common military slang among the nationalists of Jabim to refer to a heavily entrenched enemy position, one which could not be taken without heavy losses. Spikes had taken the name like a wounded soldier takes a medal of honor, and he had carried that experience throughout the entire war, and it had served him well.
Clones are
many
so cool,
times,
but
and
they
this
cannot. They
was
don't hold
no
a candle to
different.
Space Marines,
His
unfortunately.
Venator, the trusted victory, didn't even turn, all retro thrusters firing in full reverse, sliding the wedge-shaped ship backwards. He watched as other Venators, more of which were sliding into view of his bridge as his own vessel continued to reverse course, were slower to react. Many did nothing. A few didn't even cut their forward engines. And of those that did begin to take decisive action, most tried to spin their Venator around,
No.
wasting precious time. When the rolling wave of the scorching blue and purple energy reached them, it rocked the ship like an asteroid collision, sending the Star Destroyer tumbling and turning through the void like a kite caught in a hurricane. Systems flickered, alarms sounded, gravity died, and then it passed. "Damage report," Spikes called, sitting in one of the comm officer's chairs, having strapped himself down mere moments before the impact. The replies were sluggish at first, but soon the clones snapped back to their instincts, lifting off fluctuating systems, damaged components, and resequencing protocols. The ship was battered, but far from dead, and soon gravity reasserted itself as all main systems came back online. And that was good, because there was no time to lose. "I need the current status of the enemy ships," Spikes said. "It's just over 200 ships, all closing with the fleet. They're opening fire."
It's just
Spikes on
over 200 ships. No biggie. It's just over 200 ships.
Strapped himself jogging to the massive holo display at the center of the bridge. "Show me," Spikes ordered. The holotable flicked to life, showing the disarrayed elements of the KDY defense fleet, already partially devoured by the explosion caused by the dreadnought. It also displayed the outsider fleet, numerically smaller than their own armada, and yet so much more. All of their ships were massive, but they had appeared at a great distance compared to their initial dreadnought, and Spikes concluded their opening salvos to be more a show of force and fervor than an effective attack. He quickly realized his error when the Courage and the Coruscanti Honor, two fellow Venators that were drifting nearby, were suddenly struck by pillars of crimson light. The beams were almost as wide as the Star Destroyers themselves, and while the shields seemed to hold for a moment, they quickly collapsed.
Boom.
Spikes
Done.
was dead to novelty, was unimpressed by power. But even
this,
he nearly paused as he watched the two sister ships melt like candles under the crimson touch of the outsider weapons. Nearly. "Angle the ship to face the enemy fleet. Lower our profile," he called, and his crew responded with practiced efficiency. And not a moment too soon, as a similar pillar of red streaked past their starboard side, skimming the shields and scorching the plating. But it was just a scratch, a scathing hit, a small thing carrying a large lesson which Spikes took to heart. "Contact all surviving Venators in our area. Tell them to drive for the destroyed dreadnought. Tell them to use the debris and the skeleton of the ship as cover. We will lead the way."
Yep.
His orders were carried out, and even parroted by other canny officers of the Republic Navy. And soon he and 8 other Venators were cruising full thrust.
Thank
for the
goodness they're not
drifting
dealing with Night
white-hot
Lords. It'd be
wreckage
bad
of
for
the
them.
explosion that they had just barely escaped.
It's bad now.
Already
It's
he knew
worse.
turbo
Night Lords.
lasers would be ineffective at this range, far slower than the truly light-based energy weapons that were being fired at them from so many thousands of miles away.
Okay, man. Yeah.
"Sir, shouldn't we close with them? Get into effective weapons range?" "No need.
No,
They're coming to us.
no,
We need to
you don't want to do
survive
that.
their
No,
salvos until we can
no.
engage with our turbo lasers. Get me in contact with the ships around us.
You do not
Let's
want to
link
deal
up
with
into a
boarding
fleet grouping.
pods.
I've got the start of an idea." His orders carried out. Soon, the Trusted Victory and 8 other Venator Star Destroyers were flying in formation, having nearly reached the debris of the massive ship corpse. Checking the sensors on the holotable, Spikes could see the fragmented response of the Armada taking form. He was not receiving any orders or directive from the Jedi General in charge of the operation, so he assumed no one was. Half the surviving fleet was forming up around Renfi's flagship, the Honor Hound. A quarter were charging the enemy fleet, mostly made up of dedicated, non-clone crewed KDY ships.
Oh, boy.
Even that quarter matched the actual number of the charging ships, but they looked like a cloud of fleas charging a pack of Rancors, and Spikes did not expect them to do much but slow them down. Then, 2 more ships near him were struck. This time they weren't sitting ducks, however, and instead of burning through the shields and ships with persistent pillars of light, as had happened before, this time the beams strafed the surface of both ships, veering off their hulls after only a second or 2 of contact. The captain of the Ever-True, one of the struck ships, appeared on the holotable. "Captain Spikes," he said. "Captain Touchy, what's the situation on your ship?" "Well, shields are almost out, and it just got a lot hotter in here, but we seem to be doing all right. Having our sides to them helped reduce the area of contact, but I'm not using that port hangar exit anytime soon. I think they're using some kind of composite laser weapon to attack us from this range." "Captain, the Republic's glory is drifting out of formation," called a trooper. Before Spikes could even ask for it, an image of the stricken Venator was displayed for him, still mostly intact, save for the 2 bridges located at the top of the ship, both smoldering with molten metal. Already escape pods and fighter craft were launching from it, while its engines, mindless and rudderless, continued to burn at full thrust, gradually veering away from the group. Spikes thought it would surely collide with the debris they were aiming towards, but he was wrong. A second, strafing pillar of red waved across it, and then a third firing between the formation, hitting nothing. But the one additional impact was all the Republic's glory could take, and its hull was sheared away, a quarter of the ship departing on its own momentum while the mostly intact remnant of the Star Destroyer spun wildly, its damaged engines twirling it through space before it terminated 48 seconds later with an explosion. Spikes considered retreating then, and decided that even if he did ultimately do so, he would not leave before drawing blood for the Republic. Soon, he and the 7 surviving Venators were among the debris, and no more fire came towards them. For it seemed the enemy knew that their light-based weapons would be rendered vastly weaker if they fired them through the particles and lumps of the debris field.
I'm sure they have other ideas.
They were not forgotten, for it was easy to see that an entire squadron of the smaller, yet still large craft had peeled away from the main charging force to address them. As they waited, Spikes set about arranging the ships, watching the enemy approach, and finally biding his time. As he did, he redirected his attention briefly to the battle being waged by the KDY assault and the encroaching battle fleet. He blinked. They were gone. Almost all gone.
Ooh.
The enemy ships had not slowed down, did not take firing positions or angles of attack in any conventional sense.
They could probably just run them over.
Had. They merely
They're so
plowed
small.
through them,
Yep.
never halting, never
I was going to say,
stopping,
they probably didn't even
literally
stop.
ramming their way through the enemy in suicidal charges that saw ships 2 kilometers long colliding with the smaller vessels of the KDY Starfleet. And yet, they were not suicidal charges.
I was going to say, that's
Even
not...
as the KDY vessels began their haphazard assault on the faster lead...
It's like someone is running at you and you're driving a dump truck. Like... that is not... You have no concerns when you're driving that dump truck or even like a semi truck, like that. You're not even worried. You're not even worried about it. And that might even be like too good of a comparison. It would be like, maybe like, I don't know, maybe a large dog might be more apt of a description. You're just, it's not, no. I think they're doing just fine.
Leading ships of the enemy armada, even as they rained turbo lasers and concussion missiles upon them, the ships did not stop, and they did not break, not one.
Whoop, whoop.
Upon getting a cleaner image of the ships, he realized why. They had prows, giant armored prows. Most of their guns seemed paradoxically to be mounted as broadsides, as on an archaic ocean transport, with only the occasional long weapons battery or two slung under the prow or over the port or starboard shoulders of the ships. And as proton torpedoes impacted onto those massive wedge-like heads, as they were beaten by turbo lasers and concussion missiles and ship hull alike, they dented, burned, sizzled, melted, and were still too thick to overcome. Those few KDY vessels who evaded the charging noses of the outsiders were torn to ribbons in the cascading broadsides they let loose as they passed. The guns were so large, massive.
I love the ship design in Warhammer. They look awesome. I love them.
More weapons batteries
thick.
Intended for ship-to-ship
We like
combat.
our ships thick.
Some of these vessels had as little as 10, some perhaps less. And yet, to call the ships lightly armed would be more than an understatement. It would be a lie. The guns were larger than many of the KDY's whole starships, dwarfing freighters, light frigates, and all starfighters deployed against the ships which bore them.
Hey,
watching
check out the gun
pings
show.
of the enemy meet the blue pings of their own fleet, and then watching all the blue vanish like snuffed candles, was making him sick. "We can't just sit here, sir," one of the men, the helmsman, said. "They need our help. We could flank them from here. We could charge." And Spikes did not speak.
And what?
He was too afraid of what his voice might come out as, but instead, he shook his head, cutting the clone off. "Batter. You know we can't," he managed after a moment. "We will be cut to pieces by those broadsides. Besides, those larger ships are still hanging back, waiting for us to break cover so they can do to us what they did to the Republic's glory. There's a whole group of them coming for us anyway. We won't have to go to them. We need to stick to the plan." And even then, as Spikes watched the red pings headed in their direction grow closer and closer, he knew that even with his plan, there was no certainty. "Launch all starfighters," he ordered. Barely a minute after that order was given, the red pings had become visible ships. They fired, had been firing, despite the debris in the way. Their laser weapons were proportionally weakened, something Spikes was relieved to discover as one of their beams strafed across the deck of his ship and over his second bridge. No damage to anything but the shields, and the shields were holding. He breathed. The laser was smaller. Clearly it was not these weapons batteries that had been destroying the other Venators. And since they were coming at them head-on, he and his men were not being pelted the same way the hapless KDY defenders had been.
Oh no!
And then a solid slug moving nearly a quarter the speed of light flew 8 meters past his bridge. It had been larger than a tri-fighter, possibly larger than an arc fighter. "All power to shields! Give them everything for the next 20 seconds. Weapons power, internal lighting, engine strength, life support, everything but the tractor beams," he called, and not a moment too soon. A second massive shell struck them, this time blasting into the body of the Venator, bouncing off the recently strengthened particle shields in a blinding flash, spinning up and striking the bridge with another flash of light before bouncing away into space. Their fellow Venators did the same and survived the opening salvos that came, one after another. Then the outsider ships stopped firing.
But then you can't use your guns.
One mind, ramming. "Steady," Spikes called. The ships were drawing closer, engines leaving trailing plumes of plasma fire in their wake. Those plumes suddenly doubled in intensity as the ships sped up even more. "Shut off all shields, redistribute power, stay steady, troopers," he yelled, seeing his crew shuffle and tighten their grips on their controls. They did, and the familiar, safe hum of the shields died. It was no matter. As he had already seen, it was a false comfort when dealing with these extreme weapons. Their maneuvers would save them, or nothing would. "Now!" he yelled. At that moment, 56 heavy tractor beams...
You know what I'm imagining? This is like a really intense moment for like the Star Wars side of things. They're all like, oh my gosh. And then you cut to... What's that? The cover with the Space Marine? The Space Marines are just jamming it. They're like, "I'm still standing better than I ever been." Because it's like child's play. This is like child's play. This is like a training exercise. A very, very easy training exercise. Like, good thing they're giving us this version of it, because it's going swimmingly over there.
All of which had already been locked onto an enormous slice of the broken dreadnought, swung their emitters in unison. The piece of metal, easily large enough to cover them all, even while scattered, flew through the void on invisible tethers of energy, and stopped abruptly right in front of the charging ships. They attempted to veer, fiery engines sputtering and dying as they labored to slow their momentum. But it wouldn't be enough, not nearly enough, not when the next part of the plan kicked in. "Push! Full forward!" Spikes yelled, and the Venators did as ordered, their own sublight trails glowing brightly as their engines flared to full. The momentum of the outsider ships and the sudden countercharge from the massive slab of metal the Venators had put between them was too swift and unexpected a maneuver for the outsider pilots to compensate for, and, one and all, they slammed into the veritable wall of debris. The outsider vessels crumpled somewhat, windows blowing out across the lengths of all 12 ships, and small explosions and balls of fire bursting from the seams and strains. All but one were completely halted, with the single exception having been the only vessel to speed up instead of slow down. Terrifyingly, this ship punched clean through the wreckage, suffering similar damage across itself, and yet not dead or disabled. It plowed directly into the Freedom, a Venator to the right of Spike's own vessel, and he watched from close range as its massive prow nearly cleaved the Star Destroyer in half.
Oh my gosh.
Annihilating it. By the many moons, one breached the wall. Ignore it for now. Starfighters, stick to the plan. Hit them with everything you've got. Aim for the rents and breaches. Go, go, go! At his command, the Arc-Wings, Y-Wings, and other attack craft they had launched prior came out of hiding from the debris clouds all around them. The wounded, halted outsider ships were trying to back out of the sudden predicament they had found themselves in. But they were sluggish, stunned, or unable to understand precisely how they were being stopped. as the Venators continued to drive the wall forward, keeping them taut against it. Without a fighter screen to fend them off, the pilots had little trouble finding their marks, using all of their heavy ordnances, launching every last proton torpedo, concussion missile, and area control mine they had. The effect was
Star Wars
11
win, I see.
crippled, dying ships, all falling apart in the void of space. Now there was just one left, but that may have been one too many. Crippled, burning, and firing all the while, the ship's head was still buried in the broken body of the Freedom, firing into the ships to either side with its broadsides. The tempered trooper was rent into pieces with the large shells that had been fired before, having no shields to defend itself with as it aided its fellow Star Destroyers in pushing. The Vermilion Senator activated its shields before the volleys of metal death reached it, but it only survived marginally longer than its sister, the shields taking 2 strikes before collapsing, leaving the ship defenseless as it was filled with more munitions. 5 Star Destroyers remained now, and only for a few more seconds at this rate. "Open fire! All Venators, all turbo lasers, all weapons, fire, fire, fire!" Spikes yelled. His whole ship shook violently as one of the shells pierced its hull, ripping open the hangar to space. But it was too late to worry about damage. All that could be done now was to shoot and shoot and shoot until nothing remained, either of the enemy or of them. And it worked. The ship seemed to stall as, from all sides, the Venators opened fire, covering it in sprays of blue and green turbo lasers as its space frame was pelted with missiles and torpedoes from every ship. Like a salt sculpture, suddenly blasted from all sides with fire hoses, the outsider vessel seemed to simply fall apart and disintegrate under the concentrated firepower. Despite this, not one ship halted or stopped its bombardment until the wedge-shaped head of the enemy had come fully off the rest of its body.
Oh, dang.
The crews cheered, both his
But
and
you
those
just
of the other Venators.
lost a lot of people to
8
get...
on 12 and we still won, said the helmsman. "That's the might of the Republic," yelled another. But the sensors operator was not cheering.
Yeah.
"Sir, we've received transmissions from the General. We're to retreat. Pull back immediately." "Sure. As soon as we pull his saber out of this fire. How is the main battle doing?" The sensor operator looked sick. "The battle is over, sir." Spikes felt his feet go numb, but he didn't show it. "Show me," he ordered,
Yeah,
and the trooper obeyed.
it's toast. It's so
The
toast.
holotable displayed a sight which made even his heart sink. He had thought he'd never be part of a battle as disastrous as those they had fought on Jabeem. Not ever again, not this late in the war. But when he saw the graveyard that was all that remained of the vaunted KDY defense fleet, when he saw those massive, ungodly ships prowling in the wake of that burning wreckage like enormous beasts, when he saw them orienting in their direction, Spikes knew he had just become a survivor to a battle that would live in history for as long as the Republic existed, and for all the wrong reasons. Spikes tapped the holotable and brought up holograms of all the remaining captains around him. "We need to retreat immediately. We'll rendezvous at Rothana. The Republic needs to know what happened here." "Right, we'll dock starships and follow. You should get going, Spikes. I've got room enough for your squadrons," said Captain Touchy. Spikes nodded, remembering the condition of his hangar deck. "Don't take too long. It will only take them minutes to be here," Spikes said. The other clones
I don't think he's
saluted,
gonna make
and he
it.
saluted
I don't think
back.
he's gonna make it.
Spikes turned then and
At
ordered
least
his
Touchy
helmsman to
won't.
take them into hyperspace. And it was done in short order. Less than an hour later, he found himself in orbit around Rothana and its massive shipyard rings. Several other survivors of the battle had beaten him here, presumably having fled from the main battle before being taken apart. There were 25 ships there, including his own. General Renfai's flagship, the Honor Hound, was not present. And the 4 other Venators and their crews and captains never made it to the rendezvous. In fact, they
shoot!
were never heard from again. Captain Spikes waited. He was called to Rothana to provide a report, but he waited. They had been right behind him. He had only gone before them because his hangar had been damaged. Jedi arrived at Rothana from the retreat at Anaxis. They wanted to see him, to hear about how he had defeated 12 of the enemy's ships. But Captain Spikes waited. He sat, legs over the edge of the crew pit stations. He gave no more orders. He had no more orders. But his men stayed with him, and they waited for their brothers who would never come. Eventually the Jedi came to him. Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Whoa!
Mace Windu, and Anakin Skywalker.
Okay,
They were saying things,
big
but he couldn't
dogs.
hear them.
Big
couldn't
dogs.
see them. He felt a hard hand fall onto his shoulder, and he looked up, only then realizing the moisture that had gathered in his eyes. But even through that, he could make out the face of Anakin Skywalker. The same Anakin who
They
had rescued
cut-
him from his doomed position on Jabin.
They cut to like his like most terrifying phase, like
Spikes, he said. And Spikes knew the general remembered him. We're going to get them back for this, the Jedi told him, metal hand squeezing his shoulder. Somehow, that cold, metal hand conveyed something comforting to the clone. Not compassion, not kindness. The Jedi always had plenty of that.
revenge.
It conveyed understanding. It conveyed a promise. A cold, hard promise. We will get them for this, the general reasserted. But we need your help. Spikes nodded and wiped his eyes, transforming his grief, his failure, into rage and conviction. Yes, General, he said simply, taking his leader's hand and lifting himself. I'll do whatever it takes.
Oh! Beautiful. They are still undoubtedly in a bad spot. This is not good for them. That was a good episode. Oh my gosh. And there's 73 of these. There's 73 of these. Oh my gosh. I'm so spoiled. I'm so spoiled. Thank you, chat. Battle Brothers. Thank you for telling me about all of these. Because I would never have stumbled across this. Please follow. Follow, 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 follow. Like. Do it. Do it. Oh my goodness. This is incredible. And we're about to watch the 5th one. This is so good. Oh my goodness. Let me turn that down. Alright, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna try to be good at it. Okay. Oh. I got all excited to read. I got all excited to read. I don't think I will be reading. Wait. They're tricking me. Episode 5. The Imperium strikes. Disaster. In a direct defiance of his Jedi General's orders, Captain Kraken has rammed the Outsider Dreadnought, killing most inside. Disaster became catastrophe when the captain of the alien vessel detonated his warp engines, causing a massive explosion, wounding the Republic's forces and killing all survivors of the Outsider ship. It was into the grim scene that the rest of the Outsider Armada arrived. Seeing no possibility for peace or understanding, Dr. Sheena strongly advocated against Renfai's plan of action and was removed from the bridge of the Honor Hound for her conduct. Now she sits confined to the laboratory with her colleagues, awaiting the consequences of the Jedi's actions. I'm so hyped for this. This is awesome. I love this. This is incredible. Bro, wait. Oh my gosh, Red Tail Wolf, thank you for the 5,000 bits. Thank you very much. I'm so We found the new TTS. I never saw this and I super like it. Yes. Oh my gosh. Let me make sure I just didn't jack up my audio. No, we're good. My excited streaks have not messed up my audio yet. This is so great. Red Tail is made of 100% money. I am very, very, very grateful. Thank you. This is insane. You're awesome. And the Aurelia mini is coming. I promise it is coming. It's taking forever, but it's coming.
The ship quaked once more, resounding with a deep, thunderous thrum. Dr. Hackneyan was done asking nicely, done being tactful and careful. While the other two on the science team were too timid to speak up directly to a woman as formidable as Dr. Sheena, the ship was literally shaking. They were being confined to the laboratory. It was long past the time for temerity.
What in the galaxy is happening here? Sheena, what did you do?
The man half accused.
Wait, why are they blaming
Dr. Sheena
her?
hadn't spoken since arriving almost 5 minutes ago in the custody of 2 clone troopers.
What?
Dr. Hackneyan had known she had been conversing with the Jedi in charge of their expedition, but had been surprised to see her returned in custody. She didn't like Jedi. Everyone on the science crew knew that already. But what could she have possibly said to goad a man as tranquil as Renfai into doing
Okay,
this?
that's a fair
She had
statement
spent the
then.
rest of the time after her return moping as if weathering some tragedy. The biggest tragedy, as far as the other 3 scientists were concerned, was that their lower-ranking staff members had been confined to their quarters suddenly and without explanation. Dr. Hackney's accusations seemed to finally snap her out of her torpor as her eyes raised and went wild.
Me? I didn't do anything but be the voice of reason. If you want to blame someone, blame the Sith-spawned Jedi for this travesty.
Well, we're going to blame you until you tell us what in the name of the many moons happened up there, Dr. Hackneyan retorted. At this, Dr. Sheena relented. The Syrian explained the events that had preceded to her being sent to the laboratory, doing her best to be brief without sparing any detail. Well, clearly they are some kind of religious society, with this emperor of theirs at or near its head. Fascinating, Dr. Tirani concluded.
She sounds Eldari.
Always hammering religion into your anthropological studies, Tirani. The outsiders are obviously some kind of autocracy, most likely an empire if they have an emperor. Nothing innately religious about that.
Said Dr. Orthan,
you're both right.
sneering all the while.
You're both right.
Oh, really? Because I'm pretty sure Dr. Sheena described a ship, and I quote, covered in skull iconography, and... Wait, skulls? What kind of skulls? Dr. Hackneyyan suddenly asked. Dr. Sheena felt a cold surge run through her from skull to spine at this.
Are humans still humans?
I can't be sure, she said, standing. But they looked like human skulls.
Okay, so humans are still
humans. And the statues were of angels and men in armor. How did I not notice before? She murmured.
Notice what?
Asked Dr. Orthan. Dr. Tirani's face contorted in disbelief. A coincidence. We need more data, she asserted.
Oh.
Dr. Orthan looked at her.
What? What's a coincidence?
He asked.
He's got a
It must be,
big old nose.
Dr. Sheena said, moving now towards the main computer.
Look at that schnoz.
Between the 4 of them, they had some of the greatest minds within the entire Republic. Mathematics, history, hyperon mechanics, quantum theories.
Yeah, no, see, you said the Eldar one is going to die first. I don't agree. I think the one that looks like this, or looks very much not human. Because, like, even, like, the Eldar, they're, like, human-esque. It's human enough. That's a nose that can smell colors.
Small sampling of the subjects which each of them were well versed in. Dr. Sheena's speciality was as a hyperon theorist, megahydronocatalyst technician, and political technological predictions analyst. She was also, less officially, a slicer, and it was this skill set she now deployed as she hacked into the Honor Hound's databanks, retrieving as many pictures and scans of the outsider craft as she could, as well as the translation matrix for their language. Another tremor ran through the ship as she sent the data to Dr. Tirani.
Well, one of you clue me in already,
Dr. Orthan whined. Hackneyyan's eyes went wide, his hands dropping limply to his sides as he guessed upon what Sheena suspected. Don't even concern yourself with it, Dr. Hackneyyan said. It's madness to even consider it.
Consider what?
This, Dr. Sheena said, turning on the holotable in the center of the laboratory and showing them a three-dimensional image of one of the larger outsider ships. It was massive, covered from bow to stern in enormous stacks of weapons, but that wasn't the reason she displayed it now. The ship was built with layers upon layers of buttresses, statues, pillars, iconography, and art which covered the whole vessel even more densely than the guns themselves. Golden, angelic depictions of humanoids in robes holding aloft swords stood or strode in frozen rendition as statues and mosaics. Twin-headed avians stretched their wings in stylized, shining art across the hull of the ship. And the skulls, so many skulls, human skulls.
It's impressive, but what is this supposed to tell me?
Asked the doctor. Hackneyan wiped his face and scowled. Orthan, are you dense? Think for a moment. They came from beyond the edge of the galaxy. Their art is composed of human figures and human skulls. And if you had to describe that ship as something other than a ship, what words would you choose?
A cathedral.
Dr. Orthan
a
shrugged.
church.
Temple?
Yep.
Try cathedral, said Dr. Tirani. Again, Dr. Orthan shrugged.
So what? They resemble humans, worship skulls, and fly around in cathedral ships. What is that? Oh no.
He's like, what? I don't understand. Could they be extremists?
Oh, yes, Dr. Tirani said triumphantly.
By the splitting stars, are you seriously suggesting they've returned from deep space? The corking...
Dr. Orthan started, eyes going wide as saucers. The doors suddenly burst open then, and Dr. Orthan threw himself across the floor and under a desk. Standing at the entrance was Ren Fai and several clones, all armed. The Jedi had his lightsaber out, its golden blade burning the air.
There must be something Star Wars related I don't know about.
Come on, now! He ordered, and with a little coaxing from the clones, the scientists began to follow as he led them out of the laboratory. There were 14 clones of assorted ranks here, the captain of the ship and a sergeant leading the way while Ren Fai brought up the rear, making sure no one fell behind. Between them all were the scientists, with Sheena at the front of that group. What's happening? Dr. Sheena asked as she jogged alongside the clone troopers. We've been boarded. A retreat has been called. We are escorting you to the escape pods now, one of the clones said.
They've been boarded.
The Syrian
That's
scientist
bad.
felt desperate fear consume and replace the curiosity of her natural disposition. But at least the laboratory was not far from the escape pods. They reached the door access panel, and Sheena felt her heart leap into her throat when she saw it. Smashed. Someone had gotten here first, and had damaged the control panel to keep them from getting in. But she was relieved to find that it would not be enough, as one of the clones retrieved a code cylinder from his belt pack. The trooper walked to the door and fit the cylinder into a slot in the wall, forcing the door to open. As the Durasteel door slid back, a massive blue arm extended out from the now open...
Hey? Need a hand?
room, seizing the clone and yanking him inside. The man screamed, but only for a few seconds before his voice was drowned out by the sound of blaster fire.
I'm surprised
the 13 other clones that were
it was
traveling
several
with them
seconds.
had formed up on the opposite side of the door and began firing into the room. Sheena stumbled away, falling onto her rear as she watched the clones empty their blaster packs into the escape pod access. Suddenly, there was a sound, like thunder, but shorter, deeper. It shook the doctor to her bones,
Oh, it must
and
be
her
they're
hands
speaking.
snapped up to her head to cover her ears. But suddenly, she found herself
bolter
bewildered
fire.
as a warm, wet sensation washed over her. Her hands pulled away, coated in deep, arterial red. It was hot, extremely hot.
The
and yet
bolter
her
fire.
hands, her arms, her whole body felt cold. She looked up, blinking droplets of color out of her eyes, watching. 5 bodies went flying, falling into pieces with just 2 shots of whatever that weapon had been. The clone troopers it had struck turned into smears of brilliant color against the back walls of the hallway.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't even scream. They were just dead.
Just
gone before they realized it. Someone was screaming for them. Dr. Sheena looked back, expecting to see Dr. Tirani letting loose with all the force in her lungs. Such was the wailing she could hear. But it wasn't Tirani making the sound. That much was clear as Sheena's eyes found the other doctor's face. Skin paling, mouth pursed, eyes bulging. It was Dr. Sheena herself who was making the noise, the realization terrifying her even more than the gory spectacle she was being forced to witness. She clapped her hands over her own mouth, regretting the action instantly as the bitter, powerful taste of blood touched her lips.
Ew.
Renfai leapt across the corridor then, landing next to the door and seizing the code cylinder, which was still protruding from the wall. In the same instant, the large blue arm which had taken the first clone reached out and grabbed Renfai by the collar. The doctor had a better view of it this time.
Well,
enormous,
he's gone.
metal, mechanized.
Unless...
But before it could pull the Jedi into the room,
lightsabering?
Renfai twisted the cylinder, slamming the door closed on the arm.
Oh.
At the same moment, Renfai swept the glowing yellow blade of his lightsaber up, cutting through the thick limb as easily as through the bulkhead of a ship. Another bark of thunder rang out through the crack in the doorway,
lightsaber.
and Renfai sidestepped the projectile, pulling the arm with him as he did and allowing the door to slam shut fully. The dismembered limb clung tenaciously to him, and almost pulled the Jedi down as it fell away from the door.
It's a heavy one.
It was heavy,
Yep.
and when Renfai seized it by the wrist and tore it off, it took most of his robe with it. He spun, pulling the code cylinder free from the wall and burning the input slot with the end of his lightsaber.
We must hurry to the other side to reach the escape pods there. Now!
The Pios Dia were human supremacists. Oh, in old Star Wars lore, they were only beaten by tricking them into hyper-jumping into deep space. That's so funny. That's funny. That actually kind of works, like, perfectly. That works perfectly. That's awesome. Ooh. I mean, they themselves aren't awesome, but I'm glad it, like, fits nicely. Thank you for letting me know, Jonah. I will remember this. I will remember this for the rest of the series.
The Jedi ordered. Some of them are in shock, General, said a clone kneeling beside Dr. Sheena. Was she in shock? Dr. Sheena wiggled her fingers and toes, feeling them as cold, clammy, barely coherent extensions of her body. Her heart was racing, and she was sweating despite how cold it was. It was so cold, despite the heat of the blood which coated her. Was that natural?
No, you idiot. You're definitely in shock.
She screamed into the sluggish void of her thoughts. With great effort, she slowed her breathing, reaching up to put a heavy hand on the clone kneeling over her, allowing him to help her rise to her feet. I'll be fine, she said, arms and legs trembling now, responding well enough.
I half expected power armor to provide the resistance to a lightsaber that a bulkhead would have. Okay, so I feel like, you gotta throw Star Wars a few bones. I think iron halos will be the thing that counters lightsabers. Because I think the Star Wars they gotta have something that helps them out. And I think the lightsabers, it kind of makes sense, considering they've been able to cut through, like, metal doors and stuff like that, like, in movies and shows. So I think it's kind of reasonable. And you gotta give them something. You gotta give them something good.
Dr. Tirani had also gone into some form of shock, but she was not recovering from it nearly as swiftly as Dr. Sheena seemed to be. Dr. Hacknian was up, helping to steady Dr. Sheena, his own hands clammy and covered in sweat, but his face, at least, seemed controlled, disciplined, his expression not one of fear, but of concern, not of helplessness, but of proactivity. That gave her a bit more strength as they were all rushed down the corridor towards the hangar. Numbly, she could barely feel her own footfalls as they left that stained place and the monster behind the door. But even as they moved away from the bloody gate which contained their enemy, Dr. Sheena suspected they were not fleeing towards safety. Her suspicions were confirmed when the group of clones and scientists reached the broken doorway which led into the hangar. There was fire and screaming, All the starfighters and bombers had long since been launched, leaving the hangar a mostly empty expanse of flickering lights and intermittent walls of shadow. On the far side of the expanse, the still broadly lit sections revealed troopers fighting viciously and dying in droves. They were fighting things, but what they were she could not discern. Morbid fascination seized her tightly as nearly a score of clone troopers, all standing in a brilliant line, seemed to transform, blossoming like time-lapsed roses, their upper bodies twisting into the...
That is awful imagery. Blossoming like roses. Oh no, because they are perishing so fast. Oh my goodness. That's awful but good.
The air, white becoming fountains of cascading crimson.
Yep.
And the thing doing it to them, it was large, like a Gundark, but thicker and much faster. Was it a droid? She had no time left to ponder, as Dr. Hackneyan pulled her along.
No.
The battle was taking place at the far side of the hangar, and in moments, Dr. Sheena realized why. A massive alien drill tube, obviously the device that had been used to board the ship, was protruding from the wall above them. The fight had started here, and moved to where it was now. But it wasn't just the boarding vessel which made that obvious. It was the bodies. So many bodies.
They are very efficient.
What the flickering light managed to illuminate was a scene straight out of a horror vid. Clones had been eviscerated, torn apart, physically crushed, and rent into halves.
Red looks good
They
on
lay
clone
in
troopers. Oh my
piles
gosh.
where they had fallen, some in firing positions, others in circles where they had attempted to surround something lethal. But Dr. Sheena's wide eyes had barely witnessed a quarter of the carnage. Troopers hung like grim banners from steel beams and rafters. They were in pieces.
Oh, I
An
hated
arm
that
here,
episode.
A heavy,
It was good, but I
bloody
hated it.
helmet there, splayed out and left like gruesome parodies of the B-1 battle droids the clones themselves left dismembered in their wake. If that hallway outside of the escape pods had been the gates of hell, then the hangar was Gehenna proper. And then there was the smell. It forced its way through all of Dr. Sheena's mental defenses, cutting even through the torpor of her shock. It was thicker than the
crispiness
air,
of the bodies?
like a violating presence, stuffing itself into her nose, into her mouth. She could taste it. It was like rotten meat set next to a scented cinnamon candle, but so much worse.
I hate
like
cinnamon
feces and sugar mixed into a pot and set to simmer for days.
What the
It was more than Dr. Sheena could handle, and she heaved for the second time that day, as did Dr. Hackneyan and Dr. Tarani, spilling their most recent meals onto the gore-laden floor, while Sheena herself was left gasping. They can't be human, Dr. Hackneyan said,
You're right, they
wiping
aren't.
his mouth.
They aren't quite.
They just can't be.
No, you are
Dr.
correct.
Tarani began to sob,
You are correct.
falling to her knees and covering her eyes. Renfai went to her, but she seemed incensed, her limbs trembling as though she were caught in the throes of a seizure. Dr. Sheena tried to force her eyes forward, tried to not notice the slaughter around her. Instead, she noticed the captain of the clones, standing stiff as a statue, his eyes fixed on the battle being waged on the far side of the hangar. "Oh, Scrog," he cursed. "Come on, get her up, get them all moving," he ordered, going down to one knee and raising his blaster rifle. "One of those things just noticed us." Dr. Sheena rushed to where he was kneeling and came down beside the captain, following his aim to where the battle was taking place. Clones were dying quickly, and the lights at the far end of the hangar were completely shot out. She could see little more than the shadows cast by the flames and the muzzle flashes illuminating figures for microseconds at a time. Still, she squinted. She tried to see. Dr. Sheena guessed there were at least 30 clone troopers down there, taking cover in the flaming wreckage of an ATT they had brought up from the lower deck, presumably to help them fight the enemy off. They were firing, and despite the darkness, their shots certainly seemed to be tracking something. Not droids. Dr. Sheena was
They're not
almost certain
tracking
now.
it well enough.
Too fast, too coordinated. "Get moving," the clone said, handing Dr. Sheena his blaster pistol, holster and all.
Oh, that's
Dr.
not
Sheena
going to do
nodded
much.
hesitantly, but took the weapon, managing to strap it around her waist despite her cold, trembling fingers. Just before she was made to move on, she thought she could make out a silhouette against the fires, but Dr. Hackney tugged her up and
No,
away
don't
before
look,
she could
don't
get
look.
a good look. They were both running, supporting each other's strides as the scientists did their best not to slip and fall. They flinched as they heard blaster fire start up behind them. The captain and several clone troopers had stayed behind to buy them time, and were engaging the enemy even then. Following the other clones, they crossed the bloody hangar and entered into an adjoining corridor. As they began to make their way down the well-lit, pristine hallway,
And they never
Dr.
saw
Sheena
them
looked
again.
back. Dr. Orthan was running after them, 2 clones just behind him, and the Jedi, Ren 5, was just in front of Orthan, carrying the still weeping Dr. Tirani in his arms. His lightsaber was off, but still gripped in his right hand. She turned to look forward and noticed the 4 clones in front of them halting, forming up at the bend ahead, and creating a second defensive line.
Once we get around this corner, it's a straight shot to the room.
Ren 5 yelled as he caught up to and
That's
then
not
past
good.
Dr. Hackney and
Straight
Dr.
shots.
Sheena.
Keep running.
For once, Dr. Sheena obeyed his instructions with zeal, pumping her legs as hard and as fast as she could. As she ran around the bend, all 4 clones stationed there tossed their thermal detonators and turned away to take cover. She screamed. Dr. Orthan had still been behind them, but she couldn't hear her own voice as a thunderous explosion of air and heat gusted through the corridor and pushed her face down into the floor.
Oh,
Stunned, she lay there, sure her nose was broken, half sure she had been concussed. She would have remained there if not for Dr. Hackney's help, who had stopped to pull her up once more.
They killed Orthan. They blew him up. They killed him,
she babbled. Dr. Hackney was shaking his head, his lips moving, his face animated and terrified. He was saying something, but she couldn't hear him, realizing that a ringing in her ears was drowning everything else out, leaving her in eerie, inappropriate silence. She looked away from Hackney, who was trying to pull her forward, her eyes darting back. She couldn't see the clones, not through the smoke, but she could see blue flashes in the murk, and something else. There was something there, but Dr. Hackney
this is
yanked her forward
terrifying
hard,
for them.
getting her attention back in front of her and almost throwing her with how hard he began to shove. Dr. Sheena felt a flush cover her
Big
face,
Jeff.
recovering her wits and running at full sprint again, not needing to be pushed anymore as her scattered senses collected themselves. She could see it now, the door. Ren 5 had already opened it, and he was standing there, saber out and activated, Dr. Tirani cradled against him with his other hand. He was looking at something behind her. The instant Dr. Sheena reached him, he shoved Dr. Tirani into her arms roughly.
Take her. Get out of here,
the Jedi ordered. Dr. Sheena almost stumbled with the sudden weight of her colleague.
I want to know where his
and turned
Padawan
to
is in
hand
all
her
this.
off to Hackney, but he wasn't beside her any longer.
Wait, where did...
She started, but Renfi cut her off as he shoved her into the room with a gesture of his hand.
Go!
He said. They were both thrown by what felt almost like a magnetic pull, and the doctor was sent sprawling onto the floor, Tirani falling right beside her an instant before the door slammed shut. The fall had been hard, had half-winded her, but Sheena forced herself up. She looked around. They were in the prep room right before the escape pods. The walls were lined with shelves of specialized emergency equipment and supplies to supplement the basic stores already in the pods. She ignored these, turning to Dr. Tirani and grabbing the weeping woman by her shoulders.
Come on, Tirani. Up now. We have to get going,
Sheena said as she tried to pull her colleague to her feet. But Dr. Tirani was limp, uncooperative.
I wonder if they're gonna find the Padawan and he's gonna be like a prisoner. Because that'll be interesting.
Inconsolable. And when Dr. Sheena heard the muffled sound of lightsaber strikes just outside the door, she gave her only one more hard tug before releasing the doctor and leaving her on the floor. The hallway was straight and narrow, terminating in an airlock door which led to the rows of escape pods. She got up unsteadily and made for the door at a full sprint, something the Syrian regretted a moment later when the ship rocked, knocking her off balance and sending her painfully to the floor. She fell badly this time, slamming her knee and shin against one of the protruding shelves of equipment. As she pulled herself up to her feet, the lights around her flickered, but steadied after a moment. The scientist hissed as she discovered she could no longer put much weight on her injured leg, but saw she did not have much distance to travel. Wincing, finding that something in her equipment was prodding painfully against her bruised waist, and leaning against the wall, she began to hobble her way forward until she noticed that Dr. Tirani had stopped crying. "Tirani, get over here and help me get to the door panel,"
Oh no.
she said as she turned to look back at the other doctor.
Why did
When
she stop
did look back,
crying?
she found the door to the corridor was open, and where Dr. Tirani had been, only a smear of gore remained. Dr. Sheena snapped her eyes away quickly, hobbling closer to the door, wincing again as she felt something hard prod against her and the wall. Her data pad? Then she felt something else. In the wall. In the floor. It chilled her blood yet again, drove her fear into such a frenzy it was all she could do not to allow the darkness gnawing at the corners of her vision to devour her. The feeling was vibrations. Footfalls.
Oh no.
She remembered then, in a sudden fit of desperate energy, that she still had the blaster pistol on her, and without thinking, without planning, drew it from where it had been prodding her waist. She spun on her good leg, ignoring the surges of agony which her injured leg protested with, and fired. Her unexpected shot flew through the air, clean and level despite her lack of training and current condition. It scorched the air of the hallway, sped through the door leading out, and hissed against the wall. There was nothing there. Nothing behind her. The doctor held herself rigid, panting, sweating as she watched for movement, any movement. But as the 10th second slid by, there was still nothing, just the creaking of the ship and the distant rumbles of weapons fire. Swallowing the lump which had formed in her throat, Dr. Sheena turned back toward the door, pistol still in hand, making her way to the panel. She felt something again, another rumbling in the wall, more vibrations behind her.
Ooh, they're gonna
She didn't turn
get
this
you.
time, hobbling the last few steps to the control panel, feeling her skin crawl with each mechanical thump which rang through the wall she leaned on and the floor she stood on.
Oh.
Finally, the Syrian scientist fell against the panel and twisted painfully onto her back, gun out. Her pistol was trembling so hard in her hands that she doubted her aim would be able to hit any kind of mark this time, but that was beyond her concern, because there was no mark. The hallway, the prep room, the doorway, it was all still empty. She swallowed again and tasted bile there. Was she completely mad? Had she already lost her mind? Slowly, gingerly, she turned back towards the control panel, gripping its sides tightly as the ship creaked around her, almost as if in response to her own movements. She knew she didn't have her code cylinders on her, but the console before her was undamaged, so she resorted to her access code. Dr. Sheena began dialing it in, feeling the hairs rise on the back of her neck as she did. Something was wrong about all of this. Where were they? What happened to the Jedi? Why was Dr. Tirani a red smear, and yet Sheena herself was still alive? And then, a cold, black thought struck through her, slid into her mind like an assassin's knife. Her fingers hovered above the last key, not having pressed it yet, a bead of sweat and blood dripping from the digit onto the control panel. She released the blaster pistol, her grip failing her, allowing it to fall to the ground with a clatter. Hands numb, she drew out her datapad instead, and with trembling fingers, she opened up the translation matrix which she had downloaded earlier. Ready for input. The datapad chimed. She took a deep breath,
I think they're gonna take you out.
steadying herself as much as possible, given that she was almost certain that, despite present appearances, she was already as good as dead. She tried to speak but coughed and had to start again. What are you? What do you want? She asked into the air. The datapad chimed again, and then, using her own voice, it repeated the sentence in the outsider language. She listened, holding her breath, her ears working like they had never worked before. And it, whatever it was, answered.
Oh,
Its voice
getting
was
chills.
deep, mechanical, but not born of a machine. There was too much emotion there, too much power for this to be a droid. Translating. When it spoke a moment later, it did so as it had with her, and used the outsider's own voice to speak the translation.
I am an angel of death, and I have come to render judgment.
At the enunciation
Black
of its last word,
Templars.
the ship's power finally failed, everything becoming black for a few heart-rending seconds before the emergency lighting kicked in.
Yikes.
Red stripes of hazy light overlaid everything.
And in that moment, he
dyeing
was
the
right
room
there.
in a crimson sheen outlined in long black shadows. Slowly, deliberately, she turned around. She needed to see it. And when she did, her breath was pulled from her body. Her eyes grew wide, but not wide enough to encompass the monstrous form of the Angel of Death. It stood over 2 meters tall and was as broad as a fully grown Herglick. It almost resembled an archaic depiction of a Knight of Zel or other such ancient warriors who donned armor and swords to set upon their enemies. But the comparison didn't do the thing justice.
No.
It was more like those ancient men had somehow looked upon this thing and had tried in vain to imitate the wonder of it, the terror of it. The doctor found herself
It's the
so
one that chased him
overtaken by
down?
the innate power emanating from this
The
thing
arm that got
that
chopped
it took
off?
her several seconds to realize that it was wounded. One of its arms, its right arm, was missing below the elbow.
It was the one.
Looking
Oh
at
my
the opposite
gosh.
side for comparison, she found that its other intact hand
Immense
was holding
fortitude.
something small and bloody, something which still dripped with ichor.
Oh no.
She let her eyes wander
Jedi.
back to the softly glowing lenses of its head. It was looking down directly at her, and the attention alone felt lethal, as if it
Yeah.
could smash her flat with just its eyes. She wondered, briefly, why she was even still alive. And then she remembered. It had been watching her type in her code, memorizing her security password. She looked down at its boot, the blue armor there more than just lit in red, but covered in it. Swallowing, she turned back around, looking down at the console. It hadn't shut off, still glowing a soft blue in the hazy light. It was still waiting for her last key. Dr. Sheena breathed in, feeling her mind frenzy behind her eyes, feeling her subconscious turning inside out in an attempt to save her. She breathed out and pressed the key. The console screen turned green and the airlock opened. At the same moment, a bright yellow beam of light sprang forth, humming in the air less than an inch from Sheena's own face.
Woo.
It was holding Renfi's lightsaber in
I was
its
gonna say,
gripping
the
fist.
Tiny.
She knew what came next. The blade pulled away as the being, the angel, reeled back its arm. Sheena felt her lips twitch as she turned around one last time. Her heart was hammering, but her mind was oddly calm. It held the sword of light out like a proper executioner. It would end her cleanly and at once. She watched it, and it watched her, hands at her sides, chin tilted up, eyes open. It gave Sheena the slightest hint of a nod, and swung. She didn't have time to close her eyes, even to blink. So she watched as the yellow blade flashed through the air, watched as the ventilation shaft to her right suddenly burst open, a bright blue saber flying out from it, as Gaffin spun like a rotary blade through the air.
Yep.
He collided with and caught his master's yellow sword
Not
on his
that
own
child.
beam of azure light. His face was fierce, full of fear and rage, full of conviction and purpose. Even as Dr. Sheena began to stumble back, Gaffin turned to her, eyes meeting hers for less than a second as his free hand thrust forward in her direction. At the gesture, a force, like a wind, but stronger, more shaped, more precise, more focused, picked her up and threw her into the room beyond. Inside, row after row of escape pods sat, awaiting use, and she landed almost inside of one, crying out as she fell against the bad side of her leg. She grabbed the handle near the door
you
of the
better
nearest
run,
pod
girl.
and hauled herself up and over the lip, looking back to see Gaffin the Padawan doing his best to hold the monster in the hallway. He was much smaller than the Angel of Death, and was combining that with his agility to bolster his advantage. But already she could see it wouldn't be enough. Watching as the inhuman thing Gaffin contended with weaved and moved, blocking his strikes
I think he's
and
gonna
nearly
take the
landing
child.
several of its own. The pace of it was making Dr. Sheena disbelieve her own eyes. How could something so large and so heavily armored
Move so
like
quickly?
that?
Yeah.
It defied all the laws and rules her mind had become so apt at mastering, and the sight of that armored
Gene
thing
crafting,
rolling and
my
spinning
dear.
and ducking and striking with all the fluidity and grace of a waving flame plunged her into an inexplainable but all too powerful terror. With great effort, she tore her eyes away and crawled into the hatch, kicking the ceiling trigger with her good leg and watching the door slam shut. Sweating, tasting blood she knew wasn't her own, the doctor pulled herself up into a seat and punched the launch button. The seals which held the pod in the bay burst, and she was jettisoned from the metal meat grinder that the honor hound had become. Dr. Sheena huddled near the window,
Yikes.
watching, but could not see the end of the fight. Still, she hoped to see another escape pod leaving after hers. She hoped to get some sign that she had been wrong,
Nope.
that she was not the only surviving member of the crew, the only person to escape that slaughter. What she saw instead was the wreckage of the fleet which surrounded her. No other escape pods detached from the smoldering, limping remains of the Honor Hound, and all around her, massive, godlike ships were firing weapons larger than Star Destroyers, mopping up the scattered remnants of the fleet. Starfighters and smaller craft still darted about, fighting for their lives as they were hunted down by swarms of tens of thousands of what passed for strike craft among these new invaders. The doctor felt her pod jerk suddenly, recognizing the loss of momentum that came with being seized by a tractor beam. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, feeling her leg throb painfully, feeling her head ache, feeling the blood of the clones, the blood of perhaps even Dr. Hackneyan, drying onto her skin and clothes. There was nothing more she could do. No more places she could run to as her pod was pulled in. The ship which was pulling her in had not stopped its own movement, and that much was evident in how long it was taking to pull her in. Dr. Sheena bit her lip as she was drawn further and further from the battle. She wanted to hope that she was being rescued, but the logic of that didn't sit well within her.
Yeah.
Why wasn't the enemy pursuing? Why would an escaping ship even bother with her? Soon, she found the ship she was being pulled into was mostly unpowered, red emergency lights bathing the small hangar. She felt the last dredges of her adrenaline course through her as shapes approached the pod from the darkness, but she stayed put. The armored hands that opened the pod were the hands of clones, and they quickly entered and ferried her out, carefully setting her down on a crate within the dark hangar area. She was stunned, relieved, and deeply confused. "What's going on?" she asked. A clone which sat beside her gave her a painful slap on the shoulder and a laugh. "We're getting out of here, that's what."
Oh, you're a little
"But
too...
why aren't you already gone?" she pressed. The clone removed his helmet and scratched his head, smiling with no small amount of chagrin. He offered her a Bacta inhaler as the other clones went into her pod and began to dismantle its rudimentary hyperdrive. Bucket, which was what the clone called itself, explained that they had escaped the battle by shutting down almost everything and acting like a dead ship with burning engines. And apparently, the only reason this had worked was because the ship was extremely close to being exactly that, and their navicomputer had been badly damaged. "So you picked me up because you needed my hyperdrive computer?" The clone smirked. "You're welcome." The clones wasted no time in hooking it up and getting it working, but Dr. Sheena had collapsed flat on the crate and fallen unconscious
I'd be
long
with her
before
too.
they
I'd be like,
managed
"Oh,
to jump
gosh."
to hyperspace. And the doctor slept and slept. She had no idea for how long, But what she did know was that when she awoke, she was lying within a medical bay, a recently created cast constraining her injured leg. She could tell she was on Rothana by the smell, ferrous and fresh, as well as by the model of droid which was tending to her. It had clearly just injected her with something to wake her up, and she could see why right away. The doctor was surrounded by 3 Jedi and a clone. The nurse droid that had been tending to her drifted out of the room,
people
and
to
one of
talk
the Jedi
to.
approached the right side of her bed. He kneeled down next to her, making it easy for her to watch him without moving her bandaged head.
Obi-Wan?
He had a kind but concerned face. She did not know him. I understand that you've had quite an experience, Dr. Sheena. We hate to follow that up with questions so soon after what happened,
It's
but we
Obi-Wan.
are finding ourselves facing a little bit of an emergency, and we could use your help. Dr. Sheena chuckled at his understatements, and then laughed more
It's so
loudly.
Obi-Wan.
In her mind, the horrors she had seen still reached out at her, grasping at her. She laughed at them. She mocked them with her laughter, because she had lived. She had survived Hell's touch, and now all it could do was scream at her in her own voice from the confines of her memories. Impotent, unreal, a failure. She laughed and laughed, because victory had never tasted so bitter and yet so sweet. This seemed to greatly affect the clone and the youngest Jedi, but a raised hand from the one speaking to her was enough to calm them as her manic episode wore itself out.
I was gonna say, I was
Tell
like,
me,
honey,
Mr.
honey, that's not... Honey, you're having a mental break here. This is not good.
I'm sorry. What was your name again? Dr. Sheena asked. Please, call me Obi-Wan.
Aha, I
he
knew
said.
it.
Well, Obi-Wan, do you know anything of the Pius Dia?
Well. Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent. We are gonna stop there, because if we don't stop, I'm gonna keep watching this until we, like, watch the whole thing. So we have to stop so I could keep, like, I need to have some amount of self-control here. It is a shorter stream today, but I need to have self-control, so I need to get off this screen as soon as possible. I apologize. I want to watch more so badly. So badly. It's really, 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 really good. Just one more. No, see, because if I give in and we do one more, I can't. I'm gonna keep watching it. I'm like, and I'm trying to, like, even up my stream time, but look. I'm going to binge this whole thing if I do not stop myself, so we have to stop. We have to stop. I never asked you for anything, Aurelia. I'm sorry. I have to maintain my self-control. Oh my gosh, I'm hooked. I'm so hooked. Smitten. Okay, I really like that they're doing it from the Star Wars perspective, because I know 40k, they're just gonna come in and, like, wreck everything, but it's kind of cool to see it from, like, the absolute horror one would experience. What if we compromise, just watch a tiny bit? I can't, because then I'm gonna watch the whole thing. Pius Dia, basically for 1,000 years, the Galaxy Republic was the Imperium of man. I like how they're connecting all of, like old bits of lore. I think that's very clever. We have to have self-control, chat. And also, I'm hungry. That is also part of it. I need to eat dinner. This was fantastic. We are going to do this again. We're going to keep streaming this. I'm not going to break it up into VODs. But we're just going to do these amazing live streams because this is so much fun. It's like, it feels like movie night, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I felt like I just, watched a TV show and I got, through 6 episodes. This is beautiful. Please go follow. Please go follow A Fan with Too Much Time. like all of their videos and watch them. Please, 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 please. I know, I need more too. I need more. We will. We're gonna watch more next week. I already have it in my mind. We're gonna watch it next week. I cannot wait. We'll probably watch some episodes every week until we're done. Unless something comes up, but we're gonna watch it. I promise you that. I swear here and now, chat, we are gonna finish this series. It is too good. It is too good to not. It's too good. As someone who's seen this series before, this episode was a great stop point. Great. Okay, good. Good. Because, I want to keep watching, but I feel like that was like a really good stopping point. It felt good. I was like, okay, it's not too much of a cliffhanger. Like we're going to figure out what happens next. I've watched this whole series 3 times now. 3 times now? That's a lot. There's 73 episodes and they get longer. I was like looking at them and some of them get to be like an hour long. Alex, thank you so much for the super chat. I found this underrated show a while ago and binged it in 4 days. Oh my gosh, I could too, but we need to be... we gotta chill. We gotta chill because I want to binge it so badly. Oh my gosh. I can't. Okay, so let me explain my reasoning to all of you. So I read a lot as a child. So let me tell you, I know if I do not stop myself at some point, I will keep going. So like for cliffhangers in books, like I'm like, oh, I'll only read for 30 more minutes. The 30 minutes ends up being 2 hours and I'm going to bed at like 3 in the morning and it's a bad time. So I know that the same logic for reading books is going to apply to this and I am not going to stop. And it's going to be bad. So we have to stop. We have to stop so then I can fix things for streams. I consume the content like no other when it comes to like books. I devour content. How long is the next episode? Let me see. Episode 6 is 25 minutes. Yep, I would do the same and it's 4 a.m. See? Look, I have to do this for the people. The people need their rest. The people need to go to bed. It's fun to listen to this and paint minis too. Yeah, that is really nice because you don't have to look at the visuals on the screen and but I have to like devote all of my attention to it. 25 minutes is a trap. Don't click it, Aurelia. We need to pause. But it's so tempting. It's so tempting. It's so tempting. But you're right. We will hold fast, brothers. Hold fast. Fortify. Fortify your minds. We will continue this next week. Should this be Friday night stuff? Friday night movie night? Get the pizza, get the minis, and we just do Star Wars? Because, oh my, I could do this. Devour the books. Zinch demands it. Yes, we shall. We shall. We shall. Friday night works. Friday night movie night. Just sounds like fun. It just sounds like fun. Okay. 1 second. We're doing research. Research. Do. Okay. Chat, I have found 2 people we are going to raid into on both YouTube and Twitch. It's the weekend. We don't need to sleep. Well, I do need to sleep because we are streaming tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be painting the Bane Blade. The Bane Blade! So, get your minis ready. We're all going to hang out tomorrow, and we're going to paint. So, I hope you have them all prepped and ready to go, and if not, work on it with me. So, that's the plan for tomorrow. We are going to raid Maeve. Maeve, oh, can I pronounce her last name? Maeve Kikiri on YouTube, and then on Twitch we are going to raid Siri VT. Make sure you follow their rules in their chat, and make sure you you give them the cool raid message. I gotta have a command for that. We're gonna do a command for that in the future. So, thank you everyone for coming. I hope to see you all tomorrow. We are going to have so much fun painting. Okay? Alrighty. I will see you all then. Peace out, Battle Brothers.